In the vast cathedral of space, where light travels for eons before touching anything solid, silence reigns supreme. Here, between the stars, emptiness stretches so profound that human minds struggle to comprehend its scale. Yet occasionally, something breaks this cosmic stillness, a wanderer from the deep, carrying secrets from realms we've never seen. Picture, if you will, the moment when our solar system first sensed the approach of something foreign. Not the gentle dance of familiar planets in their eternal orbits, not the predictable sweep of comets we've tracked for centuries, but something else entirely. Something that didn't belong. This is the story of 3I Atlas, a designation as cold and clinical as the void itself, yet hiding a mystery that may reshape everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. The 3I marks it as the third interstellar object ever detected entering our solar system, a cosmic visitor from the space between stars. But unlike its predecessors, this one carries an unsettling secret. It's not just passing through. It has a destination. Imagine the astronomers who first spotted it, hunched over their instruments in the pre-dawn hours, watching as their screens revealed something that shouldn't exist. A speck of light moving against the stellar backdrop, but moving wrong, not following the gravitational script that governs everything else in our celestial neighborhood. Where other objects would curve gently around our sun and continue into the darkness, this stranger began to slow, to turn, as if guided by an invisible hand. And its target? Mars, the red planet that has haunted human imagination since we first looked up at the night sky and wondered what those wandering stars might be. In the sterile language of astronomy, we call it a trajectory adjustment. In the whispered conversations of those who study the skies, we call it impossible. Natural objects don't change course without reason. They don't select destinations. They certainly don't seem to navigate toward specific worlds with the precision of something ... intentional. But here's what makes this story truly unsettling. Mars has always been different. Ancient cultures across the globe, separated by oceans and millennia, all gazed upon that red dot and saw the same thing: war, destruction, divine judgment. They named it for their gods of conflict, their harbingers of catastrophe. Was this mere coincidence, or did they remember something we've forgotten? As 3I Atlas continues its inexorable approach toward the red planet, we're forced to confront questions that blur the line between science and something far more mysterious. Is this visitor merely a chunk of ice and rock from another star system, following the predictable laws of physics? Or is it something else, a messenger, a probe, perhaps even a weapon from a civilization so ancient that Earth was still a molten ball of fire when they last looked upon Mars? The mathematics don't lie, but they also don't explain. The trajectory suggests purpose, but purpose implies intelligence. And if there's intelligence behind this cosmic visitor, we must ask ourselves, what does it want with Mars? What does it know about the red planet that we don't? In the coming chapters, we'll follow this mystery deeper into the shadows of space and time, where astronomy meets mythology, where science confronts the impossible, and where the fate of one dead world might hold the key to understanding our own future. The stranger in the void is coming, and Mars, silent and waiting, holds secrets that may be darker than we ever imagined. Long before we understood what planets were, before we knew of gravity or orbital mechanics, before we could even conceive of space travel, Mars captured something primal in the human psyche. Night after night, across every continent and culture, our ancestors looked up and saw that crimson wanderer and felt ... something. Fear, perhaps, recognition, a whisper of memory from the deep places of the mind. The ancient Babylonians called it Nergal, after their god of war and pestilence. The Greeks named it Ares, their brutal deity of conflict. The Romans gave it the name we still use, Mars, their god of warfare and agriculture, of both creation and destruction. Even in distant China, it was Huaxing, the fire star, associated with punishment and cosmic judgment. Separated by thousands of miles and centuries of time, these civilizations all looked at the same red dot and saw the same thing: divine wrath made manifest. But why? Venus shines brighter. Jupiter appears larger. Saturn moves with more stately grandeur. What was it about Mars that so consistently triggered our ancestors' deepest fears and mythic imagination? Perhaps it was the color, that unmistakable rust-red hue that even today makes us think of dried blood, of oxidized metal, of worlds that have seen too much violence. Or perhaps it was the way it moved, seemingly erratic in its wandering across the sky, sometimes bright, sometimes dim, as if following the whims of forces beyond mortal understanding. Modern astronomy has given us rational explanations for Mars' behavior. We know now that its apparent retrograde motion is simply an optical illusion created by Earth overtaking it in orbit. We understand that its varying brightness corresponds to its changing distance from us. We've mapped its seasons, analyzed its atmosphere, and landed rovers on its surface. Mars, we tell ourselves, is just another planet, a cold, dusty, nearly airless world where no life as we know it could survive. Yet something about Mars refuses to be fully rationalized. Even our most advanced scientific missions can't shake the feeling that this world is different, not just geologically or atmospherically, but in some deeper, more fundamental way. Consider what we've learned about Mars in just the past few decades. Beneath that rusty surface lies evidence of a dramatically different past vast oceans that once covered much of the northern hemisphere. Rivers that carved channels still visible today. A thick atmosphere that could have supported liquid water for millions of years. Mars wasn't always the barren desert we see now. It was once a world that might have been very much like Earth. But something happened, something catastrophic. The current scientific consensus suggests a gradual process atmospheric, loss due to solar winds stripping away the magnetosphere, a slow cooling that turned oceans to ice and then to vapor. A natural death by cosmic entropy. But the more we study Mars, the more questions arise. Why did a planet so similar to Earth in its formation end up so dramatically different? Why do some of the geological features suggest sudden, violent changes rather than gradual decline? And then there are the anomalies. The features that mainstream science explains as pareidolia, our tendency to see patterns where none exist, but that continue to haunt the imagination. The so-called face on Mars in the Cydonia region. The geometric patterns that some interpret as ruins. The perfectly straight lines that spider across the surface in ways that seem almost too regular to be natural. Most scientists dismiss these curiosities as tricks of light and shadow, as the human mind's desperate attempt to find familiarity in an alien landscape. But what if there's something more? What if Mars' hold on human imagination isn't just psychological, but stems from some deeper truth our ancestors intuited but couldn't articulate? This is where Mars becomes more than just another world in our solar system. It becomes a mirror, reflecting our deepest fears about planetary death, about civilizations that rise and fall, about the fragility of worlds that seem eternal. It becomes a question mark hanging in space, asking us what happened here, and whether whatever befell Mars might one day come for Earth. Now, as 3i Atlas approaches this enigmatic world, we're forced to wonder, is this convergence mere coincidence? Or is there something about Mars, something in its history, its geology, perhaps even its mythology, that draws visitors from across the cosmic void? The red enigma awaits, holding its secrets in the dust of ages. And perhaps very soon, those secrets will finally be revealed. October 19th, 2019. The asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System Atlas detected something that shouldn't have been there. In the constellation Lynx, moving against the background of distant stars, a faint speck of light traced a path that defied expectation. The automated systems flagged it immediately, not because it was particularly bright or large, but because it was moving in a way that suggested it had come from somewhere else entirely. Dr. Robert Warwick, the same astronomer who had discovered the first interstellar visitor, Oumuamua, just 2 years earlier, was among the first to analyze the data. What he saw was simultaneously familiar and deeply unsettling. Like Oumuamua, this object was clearly not from our solar system. Its velocity and trajectory marked it as an interstellar interloper, a cosmic refugee from the space between stars. But there were differences. Critical differences. Oumuamua had behaved strangely, accelerating away from the sun in ways that couldn't be explained by gravity alone. Scientists had eventually settled on outgassing as the most likely explanation: frozen gases sublimating from its surface, creating a subtle rocket effect. It was unusual, but not impossible. Oumuamua had also been oddly shaped, elongated like a cosmic cigar or perhaps a flattened disk, unlike anything in our solar system. 2I Borisov, the second interstellar visitor, had been more conventional, clearly a comet, complete with a glowing coma and tail, behaving exactly as comets should. It had offered a reassuring glimpse of normalcy in the cosmos, proof that not every visitor from the void would challenge our understanding of physics. But 3I Atlas was different again. Initial observations suggested it was more like Oumuamua than Borisov. No obvious coma, no tail, appearing more asteroid-like than cometary. But as weeks turned to months and astronomers continued to track its progress, something unprecedented began to emerge from the data. The object wasn't just passing through our solar system. It was slowing down. In the cold mathematics of orbital mechanics, this shouldn't happen. Objects from interstellar space carry enormous velocity speeds, so great that our sun's gravity, while it might bend their paths slightly, cannot hope to capture them. They should sweep through our solar system in hyperbolic trajectories, gaining speed as they approach the sun, then losing it again as they depart, but always retaining enough velocity to escape back into the cosmic deep. 3I Atlas wasn't following this script. As astronomers refined their calculations, plotting the object's past and future positions with increasing precision, a disturbing pattern emerged. The visitor wasn't on a simple hyperbolic escape trajectory. Its path was curving, adjusting, as if influenced by forces beyond the gravitational pull of our sun and planets. More unsettling still was the destination these calculations implied. 3I Atlas wasn't randomly wandering through our solar system. It was heading toward Mars. The initial reaction in the astronomical community was skepticism, then careful reanalysis. Perhaps there was an error in the observations. Perhaps gravitational influences from the outer planets were creating perturbations they hadn't accounted for. Perhaps the object was outgassing in ways too subtle to detect visually, but significant enough to alter its trajectory. But as more observatories joined the effort to track 3I Atlas, as more data points accumulated, and the mathematical models grew more sophisticated, the conclusion became increasingly unavoidable. This interstellar visitor appeared to be navigating toward Mars with a precision that seemed almost ... intentional. The word intentional is not one that astronomers use lightly. It implies purpose, design, intelligence. These are concepts that belong in the realm of biology and technology, not in the mechanical clockwork of celestial mechanics. When rocks and ice follow trajectories through space, they do so according to the immutable laws of physics, not according to plans or destinations. Yet here was 3I Atlas, apparently violating that fundamental assumption. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a planetary dynamicist at the European Southern Observatory, was among the first to publicly acknowledge the anomaly. The trajectory analysis is clear, she stated in a carefully worded paper published 6 months after the discovery. 3I Atlas is exhibiting non-gravitational acceleration toward Mars that cannot be explained by conventional outgassing or photon pressure effects. In the measured language of academic science, this was as close to saying, something impossible is happening as you're likely to find. But what made this truly chilling was not just that an interstellar object appeared to be steering itself toward Mars, but that it was doing so with the kind of precision that would require detailed knowledge of planetary orbits, gravitational fields, and the complex dance of celestial mechanics that governs motion in our solar system. Whatever 3I Atlas was, wherever it had come from, it knew exactly where it was going. As the object continued its inexorable approach toward the red planet, astronomers around the world found themselves grappling with questions that pushed at the very boundaries of their discipline. Was this simply an unprecedented natural phenomenon? Some exotic physics they didn't yet understand? Or was it something else, entirely something that suggested intelligence, purpose, perhaps even technology from beyond our solar system? The stranger from the void had announced its destination. Now humanity could only watch and wait to see what would happen when it finally arrived. In the realm of celestial mechanics, mathematics is supposed to be absolute. Newton's laws don't negotiate. Gravity doesn't make exceptions. When you plot the trajectory of an object through space, the numbers tell a story of inexorable cause and effect of forces and masses locked in an eternal dance, governed by equations that have held true since the birth of the universe. This is what made 3I Atlas so profoundly disturbing to the scientific community. The numbers were telling a story that shouldn't exist. Dr. Elena Kowalski, one of the world's leading experts in orbital dynamics, had seen the preliminary calculations and dismissed them. Computational error, she'd muttered, running her own analysis using data from 3 different observatories. But when her numbers came back with the same impossible result, she found herself staring at her computer screen in the kind of stunned silence that accompanies the collapse of fundamental assumptions. The object designated 3I Atlas was executing what could only be described as a powered trajectory adjustment. To understand why this was so unprecedented, consider how interstellar objects typically behave. When Oumuamua entered our solar system, it followed a hyperbolic path approaching from interstellar space at tremendous speed, bending around our sun like a stone skipping off water, then racing back toward the cosmic void. Even its mysterious acceleration could be explained by natural processes. Frozen gases on its surface, turning directly from solid to vapor as it approached the sun, creating tiny jets that pushed it along its path. Comets do this all the time. As they heat up, they release gas and dust, creating their characteristic tails and subtly altering their orbits. But these changes are random, chaotic, based on where the volatile materials happen to be located on the comet's surface and how it is rotating. They don't result in precise course corrections toward specific destinations. 3I Atlas was different. Its deviations from a purely gravitational trajectory weren't random. They were systematic, consistent, and most unnervingly effective. The mathematics painted a picture that challenged everything astronomers thought they knew about natural objects in space. Using computer models that accounted for the gravitational influence of every major body in the solar system, Dr. Kowalski and her colleagues reconstructed 3I Atlas' journey from the moment it first entered the outer solar system. What they found was a trajectory that had been modified at least 3 times during its approach. Subtle adjustments that cumulatively redirected the object from a path that would have taken it past Mars entirely to one that would bring it into close proximity with the red planet. The precision is what troubles me most, Dr. Kowalski confided to a colleague during a late-night video conference. If this were random outgassing, we'd expect to see corrections in all directions. Instead, every deviation moves it closer to an optimal Mars encounter trajectory. It's as if someone is ... steering. The word hung in the digital silence of their encrypted call. Steering implied intelligence. Intelligence implied technology. Technology implied the thought was almost too vast to contemplate the 3I Atlas might not be a natural object at all. But if not natural, then what? The possibilities that emerged from the mathematical analysis were as fascinating as they were terrifying. If 3I Atlas was artificially controlled, it had to possess several remarkable capabilities. First, a propulsion system so subtle that it left no visible exhaust trail, no thermal signature detectable by our most sensitive instruments. Second, a navigation system capable of plotting complex trajectories through a foreign solar system with extraordinary precision. Third, knowledge of our solar systems is layout detailed enough to identify Mars as a target and calculate the optimal approach path. Dr. James Holbrook, a specialist in exotic propulsion systems at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, ran his own analysis of what kind of technology could produce the observed effects. If we assume artificial control, he wrote in a classified briefing document, we're looking at propulsion efficiency orders of magnitude beyond current human capabilities. The thrust-to-weight ratios required to achieve these course corrections without detectable exhaust would require either antimatter propulsion or some form of field manipulation we don't yet understand. The alternative explanations weren't much more comforting. Perhaps 3I Atlas was interacting with magnetic fields in ways that conventional models didn't account for. Perhaps it was responding to solar wind pressure with unusual efficiency due to some unique surface composition. Perhaps there were gravitational anomalies in our solar system that current models failed to predict. But each of these possibilities raised its own set of disturbing questions. If natural forces could guide an interstellar object toward Mars with such precision, what did that say about the fundamental forces governing our cosmic neighborhood? Were there influences at work that we'd completely failed to detect? As the data accumulated and the mathematical models grew more sophisticated, one conclusion became increasingly difficult to avoid. 3I Atlas was not behaving like any natural object ever observed. Whether through technology or through physics we didn't yet understand, it was demonstrating a level of trajectory control that challenged the basic assumptions of astronomy. And it was doing so with a singular purpose: reaching Mars. The red planet, silent and distant, waited at the end of this impossible trajectory like an appointment kept with destiny. Whatever 3I Atlas was, wherever it had come from, it had crossed the gulf between stars with Mars as its destination. The mathematics were clear, even if their implications remained shrouded in cosmic mystery. In the language of equations and orbital mechanics, the impossible was becoming inevitable. The stranger from the void was coming to Mars, guided by forces that defied explanation and driven by purposes that remained utterly unknown. The only question now was, what would happen when it finally arrived? In the shadow of ancient ziggurats, Babylonian priests gazed upward at the crimson wanderer they called Nergal, god of war and plague. Thousands of miles away, in the olive groves of Greece, philosophers watched the same red star and named it Ares, their brutal deity of battlefield slaughter. Across the Mediterranean, Roman augurs tracked its movements and called it Mars, honoring their god of both warfare and agriculture, the bringer of both death and life. What is it about this distant world that so consistently triggered humanity's deepest associations with conflict and cosmic judgment? Why did civilizations that had never communicated, separated by vast distances and centuries of time, all look at that same red dot in the sky and see divine wrath made manifest? The answer may lie deeper than mere color symbolism or random cultural coincidence. Perhaps our ancestors were remembering some ancient trauma encoded in the collective memory of our species, some cosmic catastrophe that linked Mars forever with destruction and divine retribution. Consider the remarkable consistency of these myths. In Mesopotamia, Nergal was not just a god of war, but specifically a deity of planetary devastation, the one who brought plagues that could wipe out entire civilizations, who commanded fires that fell from heaven. The Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, describes cosmic battles between the gods that reshaped the very heavens, with Nergal as a key agent of celestial destruction. The Norse had their own version. They saw Mars as Tyr's star, named for their one-handed god of war, who sacrificed his limb to bind the cosmic wolf Fenrir. But Tyr wasn't just any warrior deity. He was specifically associated with the end times, with Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, when the very cosmos would be consumed in flames. Even in cultures with no direct contact with the Mediterranean world, the pattern persisted. Hindu astronomers called it Mangala, after their god of war and commander of celestial armies. The Maya tracked it as one of their most important astronomical bodies, associating its movements with periods of conflict and dynastic change. In ancient China, it was Huaxing, the fire star, believed to herald cosmic punishment and the fall of dynasties. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of these global Mars myths is how often they describe not just earthly warfare, but cosmic catastrophe on a planetary scale. Ancient texts speak of weapons that could destroy entire worlds, of divine conflicts that reshaped the heavens themselves, of fires that rained from the sky with the power to sterilize entire planets. The Sanskrit epic the Mahabharata describes weapons called Brahmastra, divine armaments capable of devastating whole regions with fires that burn for years, that poison the earth and sky, that can reduce entire armies to ash. The description reads uncannily like a nuclear holocaust, but the ancient text claims these weapons came from the heavens, wielded by gods whose conflicts played out across the cosmic stage. Similar themes appear in the biblical accounts of divine destruction, the fire and brimstone that consumed Sodom and Gomorrah, the plagues of Egypt, the vision of cosmic warfare in Revelation where stars fall from heaven and the very fabric of reality burns. While these are typically interpreted as earthly events or metaphorical visions, what if they preserve memories of something far more literal planetary destruction witnessed from afar? The Aboriginal Australians, isolated from old world civilizations for tens of thousands of years, developed their own Mars mythology that is equally focused on cosmic conflict. In their Dreamtime stories, the red star is associated with ancestral warriors whose battles were so fierce they left scars visible in the night sky. But these weren't ordinary human conflicts. They were cosmic struggles that could reshape the very landscape of the heavens. Modern archaeology has uncovered another disturbing pattern. Many ancient civilizations experienced sudden, catastrophic collapses at roughly the same time periods, often accompanied by evidence of massive fires, climate disruption, and the abandonment of major cities. The Late Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BC saw the simultaneous fall of the Mycenaean Greeks, the Hittite Empire, and numerous other civilizations across the Mediterranean and Near East. The cause remains mysterious, but ancient accounts consistently blame it on invasions from the sea and fires from the sky. Could these global patterns of destruction and rebirth be connected to actual cosmic events, perhaps to Mars itself? Modern astronomy tells us that Mars has experienced its own catastrophic history. Evidence suggests it once possessed a much thicker atmosphere, vast oceans, and possibly even life. But something happened to transform this potentially habitable world into the barren, radiation-scoured desert we see today. What if our ancestors witnessed this transformation? What if ancient Earth experienced some of the same cosmic forces that devastated Mars? And humanity's Mars mythology preserves distorted memories of planetary catastrophe observed across the void? The consistency of war god associations across unconnected cultures suggests something deeper than coincidence, perhaps a species-wide memory of cosmic violence that linked Mars forever with destruction and divine judgment. As 3i Atlas continues its approach toward this myth-shrouded world, we're forced to confront an unsettling possibility. What if the ancient myths were right? What if Mars really is a world associated with cosmic warfare, with weapons that can sterilize planets, with forces that bring divine judgment from the void? The red planet turns in its ancient orbit, silent and distant, but perhaps not as dead as we assumed. And now, after eons of solitude, it has attracted another visitor from the Deep One, whose intentions remain as mysterious as the mythic forces that have always surrounded the world of war. In 1976, as NASA's Viking 1 orbiter swept across the rust-colored landscape of Mars. Its cameras captured something that would haunt human imagination for decades to come. There, in the Cydonia region, carved into the ancient Martian bedrock, appeared what looked unmistakably like a human face, a colossal visage nearly 2 miles long, staring up at the cosmos with hollow eyes and enigmatic expression. The official NASA response was swift and measured. Pareidolia. They explained the human tendency to see familiar patterns in random shapes, like seeing animals in clouds or faces in coffee stains. Just an unusual mesa, sculpted by wind and time into a configuration that happened to trigger our pattern recognition systems. Nothing more than stone and shadow playing tricks on human perception. But what if they were wrong? The face on Mars, as it came to be known, was just the beginning. As researchers pored over the Viking images with increasing scrutiny, more anomalies emerged from the Martian landscape. Near the face, a cluster of structures that appeared disturbingly geometric pyramid-like formations, arranged in patterns that seemed too regular, too purposeful to be accidents of geology. Dr. Richard Hoagland, a former NASA consultant, spent years analyzing these formations with mathematical precision. His measurements revealed something extraordinary. The objects in Cydonia appeared to be positioned according to complex geometric relationships, with angles and distances that corresponded to fundamental mathematical constants. The arrangement suggested not random erosion, but intentional design, a massive complex of structures laid out according to principles that required advanced mathematical knowledge. The mainstream scientific community remained skeptical, dismissing these findings as wishful thinking and selective interpretation of ambiguous data. But as higher resolution images became available from later missions, the mystery only deepened. The Mars Global Surveyor, as detailed photographs of the face revealed that while it wasn't as obviously face-like as the original Viking images suggested, it retained geometric features that were difficult to explain through natural processes alone. More troubling were the other anomalies scattered across the Martian, surface formations that seemed to display geometric precision far beyond what random erosion should produce. The so-called city near the face showed rectangular and pentagonal structures arranged in grid-like patterns. The fortress displayed straight lines and right angles that persisted across multiple high-resolution images. Most intriguingly, some formations showed what appeared to be internal geometric relationships, chambers, passages, and structural elements that suggested three-dimensional architectural planning. But Cydonia wasn't the only region displaying these mysterious features. Across Mars, researchers identified dozens of locations where the landscape seemed to preserve traces of geometric order. The glass tunnels near the South Pole appeared to be perfectly straight channels running for hundreds of miles across the Martian surface. The D&M pyramid, named after researchers Vincent DiPietro and Gregory Molinar, displayed five-sided geometry with mathematical relationships that matched those found in Earth as most sophisticated ancient monuments. Perhaps most unsettling were the formations that seemed to show signs of internal structure, what some researchers interpreted as ruins buried beneath eons of dust and debris. Thermal imaging revealed temperature anomalies beneath several of these sites, suggesting hollow spaces or different materials than the surrounding bedrock. Ground-penetrating radar data from various Mars missions hinted at geometric voids beneath the surface empty spaces, arranged in patterns that looked disturbingly like underground chambers or tunnel systems. The European Space Agency's Mars Express mission provided additional disturbing data. High-resolution images revealed what appeared to be partially buried structures extending far beneath the visible surface formations. Some of these subsurface features displayed the kind of right-angle geometry that nature rarely produces straight, lines intersecting at precise angles, forming what looked like the foundations of massive architectural complexes. Dr. John Brandenburg, a plasma physicist who worked on NASA's Mars missions, published a controversial analysis suggesting that the geometric anomalies on Mars might represent the preserved remains of an ancient civilization. His calculations indicated that many of the formations showed signs of having been constructed from materials different from the native Martian bedrock, possibly artificial substances designed to withstand the planet's harsh environment for geological time periods. The mathematical relationships are too precise to be coincidental, Brandenburg argued. We are looking at evidence of large-scale construction projects that would have required advanced engineering knowledge and sophisticated construction techniques. The question isn't whether these are artificial. The question is how long they've been there. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of these potential ruins is their apparent age. Geological analysis suggests that if the Cydonia formations are artificial, they would have to be incredibly ancient, possibly millions of years old, created when Mars still had a thick atmosphere and liquid water on its surface. This would place their construction at a time when Earth was populated only by primitive microorganisms, when complex life as we understand it had barely begun to evolve. If these really are the preserved remains of Martian architecture, they represent something unprecedented in human understanding, evidence of advanced intelligence operating in our solar system eons before Earth produced anything more sophisticated than pond scum. The implications are staggering, not just for our understanding of Mars, but for our entire conception of intelligence, civilization, and our place in the cosmic timeline. And now, as 3i Atlas approaches this possibly monument-covered world, we are forced to confront an uncomfortable question. What if this interstellar visitor knows something about Mars that we are only beginning to suspect? What if its precise navigation toward the red planet isn't random, but represents a return to a world that was once far more significant than a barren desert? The messages written in Martian stone remain cryptic, their meaning lost to ages of wind and time. But perhaps 3i Atlas carries the key to deciphering these ancient texts, or perhaps it comes bearing messages of its own, carved not in stone, but in the trajectory of its approach across the void. The red planet keeps its secrets buried beneath layers of dust and denial, but those secrets may not stay hidden much longer. Stand for a moment on the rim of what was once the shoreline of an ancient sea. Not on Earth, but on Mars, in the northern lowlands, where sophisticated instruments have detected the chemical signatures of salt deposits, the mineral evidence of waves that lapped against beaches 4 billion years ago. Here, in the Martian dust, lies proof of one of the most profound mysteries in our solar system. How does a world die? The evidence is overwhelming now, accumulated through decades of robotic exploration. Mars was once a water world. The Curiosity rover has rolled across ancient lake beds, its instruments detecting clay minerals that can only form in the presence of liquid water. The Perseverance rover explores what scientists now know was once a river delta, its cameras capturing perfectly preserved sedimentary layers that tell the story of flowing water, seasonal floods, and the patient work of rivers, carving channels through living rock. But it's not just the geological evidence that paints this picture of a lost ocean world. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has mapped vast networks of valley systems, river channels that once carried more water than the Amazon, deltas where ancient Martian rivers emptied into seas that covered nearly a third of the planet's surface. Spectroscopic analysis has identified hydrated minerals scattered across thousands of square miles, the chemical fossils of a world where water flowed freely under skies that may once have been blue. The northern plains of Mars preserve the most compelling evidence of this aquatic past. Here, the planet's surface lies several miles lower than the southern highlands, forming what appears to be a vast ocean basin. The boundary between these regions shows unmistakable signs of ancient shorelines, terraced formations that mark different sea levels, sedimentary deposits that could only have been laid down by the action of waves and tides. Dr. Timothy Parker, a geologist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, has spent years mapping these ancient coastlines. His analysis reveals something remarkable. Mars once possessed not just lakes or rivers, but true oceans, bodies of water, comparable in size to Earth's Arctic. ocean deep enough to have supported complex ecosystems stable enough to have persisted for millions of years. The evidence is unambiguous, Parker explains, pointing to high-resolution topographical maps that reveal the ghostly outlines of ancient seas. Mars had an ocean. Not a small one, not a temporary one, but a vast body of water that would have fundamentally altered the planet's climate, chemistry, and potential for life. But perhaps most intriguingly, this ancient Martian ocean didn't disappear gradually. The geological evidence suggests something far more dramatic, a relatively rapid transformation that turned an ocean world into a frozen desert in what, geologically speaking, was the blink of an eye. The Mars Global Surveyor discovered vast deposits of hematite iron oxide concentrated in regions that would have been the deepest parts of the ancient ocean. But this isn't ordinary rust. It's hematite that forms only under very specific conditions, in the presence of hot water, under pressure, with just the right chemical environment. On Earth, similar deposits form near underwater volcanic vents, in the crushing depths where life itself may have first emerged. Even more mysterious are the subsurface discoveries. The Mars Advanced Radar for Subsurface and Ionosphere Sounding, MARSIS, instrument has detected what appears to be liquid water still existing beneath the Martian South Pole, not just ice, but actual liquid brine preserved in underground pockets, where the pressure and salinity keep it from freezing even in the brutal Martian cold. But it's the European Space Agency's Mars Express that has provided perhaps the most haunting evidence of Mars' watery past. Its instruments have detected methane in the Martian atmosphere. Not much, just a few parts per billion, but enough to suggest that something on Mars is still producing this gas. On Earth, methane comes primarily from biological processes. The implications for Mars are staggering. Dr. Sashal Atreya, a planetary scientist at the University of Michigan, has studied the Martian methane mystery for years. The methane appears to be released seasonally, he notes, and from specific geographic regions. This suggests active processes beneath the surface, either geological or possibly biological. The most intriguing detections come from regions that were once the deepest parts of the ancient ocean areas, where conditions might still exist for primitive life to survive in underground aquifers, feeding on chemical energy in the eternal darkness beneath the Martian surface. But what caused this transformation from ocean world to frozen desert? The current scientific consensus points to atmospheric loss. Mars' weaker gravity and lack of a protective magnetic field allowed solar wind to gradually strip away its atmosphere, reducing the greenhouse effect that kept surface water liquid. Over millions of years, the oceans evaporated or froze, leaving behind only the mineral ghosts we see today. Yet some researchers suggest the transformation might have been more sudden, more catastrophic. Isotopic analysis of the Martian atmosphere reveals ratios of gases that could indicate massive atmospheric loss in a relatively short period, possibly due to a series of enormous impact events that literally blasted much of Mars' air into space. Evidence for such impacts exists in the form of Mars' asymmetric geography. The northern lowlands, where the ancient ocean lay, are not only lower in elevation, but show signs of having been created by one or more massive impact events. The largest, the Borealis impact, would have been an asteroid or comet impact, so enormous it would have fundamentally reshaped the planet's surface and atmosphere. As 3I Atlas continues its approach toward this once oceanic world, we are forced to confront an unsettling possibility. What if the visitor from the void knows something about Mars' watery past that we're only beginning to discover? What if its destination isn't the barren desert world we see today, but the memory of the ocean world that once was? The echoes of that dead ocean still reverberate through Martian geology, preserved in salt deposits and mineral formations that tell the story of a world transformed. But perhaps the most important question isn't how Mars lost its oceans, but whether something in those ancient waters might still be waiting deep beneath the surface for visitors from the stars. The red planet keeps its aquatic secrets buried beneath miles of dust and time. But those secrets may not stay hidden much longer. In the deepest layers of Martian geology, beneath the accumulated dust of 4 billion years, lie secrets that could rewrite everything we think we know about intelligence in our solar system. Here, in the ancient bedrock of a world that died before Earth's first complex life forms drew breath, might rest the evidence of something that conventional science insists cannot exist: a lost civilization that once called Mars home. The possibility sounds like science fiction, but consider the evidence that continues to accumulate with each new mission to the red planet. Not just the geometric anomalies in Cydonia, not just the mysterious mineral formations that suggest artificial construction, but something far more subtle and potentially more significant: isotopic signatures that don't match what we expect from a naturally evolved planetary system. Dr. John Brandenburg's analysis of Martian atmospheric composition reveals xenon isotope ratios that are virtually identical to those produced by nuclear weapons testing on Earth. This isn't speculation. It's measurable data from multiple Mars missions, cross-verified by different instruments and research teams. The isotopic signature suggests that Mars experienced nuclear reactions on a massive scale at some point in its geological past. The xenon 129 to xenon 132 ratio in the Martian atmosphere is consistent with that, produced by nuclear fission. Brandenburg explains in his controversial but mathematically rigorous research. On Earth, we see similar ratios only in the aftermath of nuclear explosions. The natural question is, what could have produced nuclear reactions of this magnitude on Mars? The conventional explanation involves natural radioactive decay in uranium deposits, but the scale required to produce the observed atmospheric signatures would demand uranium concentrations far beyond what we've detected on the Martian surface. Brandenburg's alternative hypothesis is as elegant as it is disturbing. Mars bears the isotopic scars of an ancient nuclear catastrophe, possibly a civilization-ending war fought with weapons that could sterilize an entire planet. But the nuclear signatures are just one piece of a larger puzzle. Consider the mineral composition of certain Martian rocks analyzed by our rovers. Some samples contain elements and compounds that are extremely rare in natural geological processes, but common in industrial applications, materials that would be produced by advanced metallurgy, electronic manufacturing, or large-scale construction projects. The Mars Science Laboratory detected potassium and chlorine concentrations in some regions that exceed what standard geological models predict for natural Martian formation. These elements, in the combinations observed, are typically associated with agricultural processes, the kind of large-scale soil modification that would result from intensive farming operations conducted over thousands of years. Even more intriguingly, spectroscopic analysis from orbit has identified glass formations scattered across specific regions of Mars, not the volcanic glass produced by natural processes, but what appears to be fused silica of the type created by extreme heat events. The distribution patterns of these glass deposits don't correspond to known impact sites or volcanic activity. Instead, they reconcentrated in regions that show other signs of geometric organization areas, where the landscape preserves hints of possible artificial structures. The European Space Agency, SMARS, Express has detected trace amounts of complex organic compounds in the Martian atmosphere, not just simple hydrocarbons that could result from natural chemistry, but more sophisticated molecules that suggest biological processes. Some of these compounds are the type typically associated with decomposition, the chemical signatures of once living material breaking down over geological timescales. Dr. Gilbert Levin, the principal investigator for the Viking-labeled release experiment, has spent decades arguing that his 1976 results actually detected active microbial life on Mars. The experiment showed metabolic activity in Martian soil samples organisms, consuming nutrients and producing gas in patterns that matched biological processes. Although NASA officially classified the results as inconclusive, Levin maintains that the data clearly indicated living microorganisms. The biological interpretation of our results has never been refuted, Levin insists. We found microbial life on Mars in 1976, but institutional bias prevented the scientific community from accepting the evidence. But what if the Viking experiments detected not just microbial life, but the remnants of something far more significant? What if the organic compounds in metabolic activity represented not primitive Mars life, but the degraded remains of a complex ecosystem that once supported advanced biological development? Recent discoveries have added weight to these speculative possibilities. The Curiosity rover's analysis of Martian sedimentary layers has revealed organic molecules complex enough to have originated from biological processes. The seasonal variation in atmospheric methane concentrations suggests ongoing activity beneath the surface processes. That could indicate either current microbial life or the slow decomposition of organic material from a much more biologically active past. Perhaps most intriguingly, ground-penetrating radar has detected geometric void spaces beneath several regions of Mars that show surface anomalies. These subsurface structures display the kind of regular geometry that typically indicates artificial construction chambers, tunnels, and passages arranged in patterns that natural geological processes rarely produce. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has identified what appear to be entrance points to these subsurface structures, cave-like openings that lead to extensive underground networks. Some of these openings show signs of artificial modification carved edges, geometric shapes, structural elements that suggest they were created or modified by intelligence rather than natural erosion. If Mars once supported a technological civilization, the subsurface environment would be exactly where we'd expect to find the most intact remains. Protected from the harsh surface conditions that have scoured the planet for billions of years, underground installations could preserve evidence of advanced technology, complex architecture, even biological remains that could tell us who or what once called Mars home. As 3I Atlas continues its precise navigation toward this possibly tomb world, we reforce to confront a possibility that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about intelligence and civilization in our cosmic neighborhood. What if this interstellar visitor isn't approaching a dead world, but returning to one that was once very much alive? The whisper of forgotten civilizations echoes faintly through Martian geology, preserved in isotopic signatures and mineral formations that hint at a past more extraordinary than we've dared to imagine. And perhaps very soon, that whisper will become a voice speaking across the void to those who have traveled between the stars to hear its ancient message. July 20th, 1976. As America celebrated the first anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing, something far more significant and far more disturbing was happening on the surface of Mars. The Viking 1 lander, humanity's first successful robotic foothold on another planet, was conducting an experiment that would challenge everything we thought we knew about life in our solar system. The labeled release experiment, designed by Dr. Gilbert Levin, was elegantly simple in concept. Mix Martian soil with a nutrient solution containing radioactive carbon-14, then monitor for radioactive gas emissions that would indicate metabolic activity, the telltale signature of living organisms consuming food and producing waste. It was the kind of test that had worked reliably on Earth for decades, a straightforward way to detect microbial life anywhere it might exist. What happened next should have changed history. The experiment worked. Within hours of the nutrient injection, the Viking lander's instruments detected a surge of radioactive gas emissions from the Martian soil samples. The signal was strong, consistent, and followed exactly the pattern that biological activity would produce. According to every protocol established for the experiment, Viking 1 had discovered life on Mars, but this was just the beginning. The experiment was repeated multiple times with different soil samples from different locations around the lander. Each time, the results were the same: strong, positive detection of what appeared to be biological metabolism. The organisms in the Martian soil were consuming the provided nutrients and producing gas at rates that suggested a thriving microbial ecosystem. The most convincing evidence came from the control experiments. When soil samples were heated to temperatures that would sterilize any Earth-based life, the metabolic activity disappeared exactly what you'd expect if living organisms were being killed by the heat treatment. When the samples were stored for extended periods, the activity gradually declined. Consistent with organisms dying off over time, Dr. Levin was convinced he had made the most important discovery in human history. But NASA's official response was swift and decisive. The results were classified as inconclusive, despite following exactly the protocols established for detecting life, despite producing results that would have been considered definitive proof of biological activity on Earth. The Viking-labeled release experiment was dismissed as a false positive caused by unknown chemical processes. The official explanation centered on the failure of other Viking instruments to detect organic molecules in the Martian soil. The gas chromatograph mass spectrometer, GCMS, found no evidence of the complex organic compounds that life typically produces. NASA concluded that if there were no organic molecules, there could be no life, and therefore the labeled release results must have been caused by some exotic chemical reaction unique to Mars. But this explanation never satisfied Dr. Levin. For over 4 decades, he has maintained that his experiment detected genuine biological activity on Mars, and that the failure to find organic molecules was due to limitations of the GCM's instrument rather than the absence of life itself. Recent discoveries have vindicated his position. We now know that Mars does contain organic molecules, but they exist in forms and locations that the 1976 Viking instruments couldn't detect. What makes the Viking-labeled release results even more intriguing is their geographical distribution. The biological activity wasn't uniform across all soil samples. Instead, it showed patterns that suggested complex ecological relationships, some areas with high activity, others with low activity, variations that seemed to correspond to environmental factors like moisture content and soil chemistry. Most mysteriously, the activity showed seasonal variations. Repeat experiments conducted months apart showed different levels of metabolic activity in the same locations, as if the Martian organisms were responding to seasonal changes in their environment. This kind of temporal variation is exactly what you'd expect from living ecosystems, but very difficult to explain through purely chemical processes. The implications of accepting the Viking-labeled release results as genuine biological detection extend far beyond simple microbial life. If Mars supported active biological processes in 1976, it suggests that the planet's subsurface environment might be far more hospitable to life than we've assumed. It implies that liquid water, organic nutrients, and suitable temperatures exist in locations accessible to our robotic explorers. More significantly, it raises questions about the nature and origin of Martian life. If the organisms detected by Viking were indigenous to Mars, they would represent a completely independent genesis of life in our solar system, proof that biology isn't unique to Earth, but a common phenomenon wherever suitable conditions exist. If they weren't indigenous, the alternative explanations become even more intriguing. Dr. Levin's most recent analysis of the Viking data has revealed another disturbing pattern. The biological activity showed what appeared to be circadian rhythms, regular cycles of higher and lower metabolic activity that corresponded to the Martian day-night cycle. This kind of rhythmic biological activity is typically associated with complex organisms that have evolved sophisticated regulatory mechanisms in response to environmental cycles. The data clearly shows biological activity, Levin maintains. Not just simple chemical reactions, but complex, organized, adaptive biological processes that respond to environmental changes in exactly the way living organisms should respond. As 3I Atlas approaches Mars, the Viking-labeled release experiment takes on new significance. If Mars really does harbor active biological processes, if the red planet is not the sterile desert world we've assumed, but a living ecosystem hidden beneath its surface, then the arrival of an interstellar visitor becomes far more than a simple astronomical event. Perhaps 3I Atlas knows something about Mars that we're only beginning to suspect. Perhaps its precise navigation toward the red planet isn't targeting a dead world, but seeking out one of the few places in our solar system where life has managed to survive against all odds. The signal that shouldn't exist continues to haunt our understanding of Mars. And perhaps, very soon, that signal will be joined by others' communications from across the void that will finally reveal whether life on Mars is truly as impossible as we've convinced ourselves it must be. In the sacred caves of Lascaux, painted by human hands 17,000 years ago, strange figures dance across stone walls, beings with elongated heads and mysterious symbols, reaching toward stars that burn red in the prehistoric sky. Half a world away in the American Southwest, Hopi petroglyphs tell of star people who came from the red star Kashina, bringing both wisdom and warning to humanity's ancestors. In ancient Sumerian tablets, the Anunnaki descend from the heavens, their home a distant world that glows like fire in the darkness. Could these myths, scattered across continents and millennia, preserve memories of something real contact with intelligences from the world we now call Mars? The possibility seems preposterous until you examine the consistent patterns that emerge from humanity's oldest stories. Across cultures that had no contact with each other, myths describe beings from the red star who possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, engineering, and the natural world. These weren't gods in the traditional sense, but entities described as flesh and blood, capable of interbreeding with humans, vulnerable to injury and death, but possessing technology that seemed magical to primitive Earth cultures. The Aboriginal Australians, isolated from the rest of humanity for 50,000 years, developed complex mythology around the red wanderer in the sky. Their Dreamtime stories describe it as the home of the sky heroes, beings who traveled between worlds and occasionally visited Earth to share knowledge with humanity. But these weren't benevolent encounters. The Aboriginal myths consistently described the sky heroes as dangerous, unpredictable entities whose visits often brought catastrophe and change. In South America, the Inca spoke of Viracocha, the creator god who came from across the heavens when the world was dark and cold. But Viracocha wasn't described as supernatural. He was depicted as a tall, pale being who taught humans agriculture, astronomy, and engineering before returning to his home among the stars. The Inca identified his dwelling place as the red star that moved across the night sky, distinct from the fixed stars that never changed their positions. Perhaps most intriguingly, many of these ancient cultures possessed astronomical knowledge that they shouldn't have been able to develop independently. The Dogon people of Mali knew about the orbital period of Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible to the naked, centuries before modern telescopes could detect it. They claimed this knowledge came from visitors from the red star who taught their ancestors about the true nature of the cosmos. The Maya developed one of the most sophisticated astronomical systems in the ancient world, capable of predicting planetary positions thousands of years into the future. Their primary focus wasn't on the sun or moon, but on tracking the movements of what they called the war star. Maya inscriptions described this planet as the dwelling place of beings who could travel between worlds and whose actions influenced the fate of earthly civilizations. But it's the global flood myths that provide perhaps the most compelling evidence for ancient memories of cosmic catastrophe. Virtually every culture on Earth preserves stories of a great deluge that destroyed previous civilizations, but many of these myths include details that don't match any earthly flood. They describe fires that fell from the sky, stars that changed their courses, cosmic battles that reshaped the heavens themselves. The Hindu Puranas describe a cosmic war between the gods that resulted in the destruction of previous worlds. The weapons used in this conflict weren't swords or spears, but devices that could burn entire cities, create columns of fire that reached to heaven, and poison the earth and sky for generations. The Sanskrit descriptions read eerily like accounts of nuclear warfare, but the texts insist these battles took place in the heavens, between beings who dwelt on different worlds. Greek mythology preserves similar memories in the story of Phaeton, who lost control of the sun chariot and nearly burned the earth to cinders. But astronomical analysis of the myth reveals that it may preserve memories of actual cosmic events, possibly a close planetary encounter that brought Mars and Earth dangerously close to each other, creating gravitational chaos that could have caused the kind of catastrophic flooding and burning described in the ancient accounts. The biblical account of the war in heaven, where Lucifer and his angels are cast down from their celestial realm, may preserve similar memories. The imagery of falling stars of cosmic battles that reshape the heavens of divine judgment, that brings both fire and flood to the earth, matches patterns found in myths worldwide, all consistently associated with the red planet that our ancestors identified as the dwelling place of war gods and fallen angels. Modern analysis of ancient astronomical records reveals another disturbing pattern. Many cultures recorded periods when Mars appeared much brighter and closer than it does today. Ancient Chinese records describe times when the fire star blazed in the sky like a second sun, close enough to show surface details visible to the naked eye. Babylonian tablets record similar observations, describing Mars as occasionally appearing as large as the moon and bright enough to cast shadows at night. If these observations were accurate, they suggest that Mars' orbit may have been significantly different in the ancient past, possibly bringing it much closer to Earth during periods of orbital instability. Such close encounters would have been catastrophic for both worlds, creating the kind of global floods, climate disruption, and civilizational collapse that ancient myths consistently describe. Dr. Emanuel Velikovsky's controversial research suggested that Mars experienced massive orbital changes in historical times, possibly due to gravitational interactions with other planets or encounters with large comets. While his specific theories have been largely rejected by mainstream science, recent discoveries about planetary migration and orbital instability have made his core insight more plausible. Planets don't always stay in the same orbits, and close encounters between worlds could have catastrophic consequences for any civilizations that might exist on them. As 3I Atlas approaches Mars, we are forced to confront the possibility that humanity's oldest myths may preserve memories of events far more literal than we've assumed. What if our ancestors really did witness cosmic catastrophes involving Mars? What if the consistent association between the red planet and divine judgment reflects actual memories of planetary encounters that nearly destroyed both worlds? The architects of myth may have been recording history, not fantasy. And if so, the arrival of another visitor from the void may signal that the cosmic trauma they described is not yet finished. In the sterile language of astronomy, 3I Atlas remains classified as a small solar system body, a chunk of ice and rock that happens to have wandered in from interstellar space. But as the object continues its precisely calculated approach toward Mars, this clinical designation feels increasingly inadequate to describe something that behaves less like a random cosmic wanderer and more like a spacecraft following a predetermined flight plan. The mathematical precision of its trajectory adjustments suggests either exotic physics we don't yet understand or technology beyond our current capabilities. But there is a third possibility that mainstream science has been reluctant to consider. What if 3I Atlas isn't just visiting our solar system, but returning to it? Dr. Sarah Seeger, an astrophysicist at MIT who specializes in exoplanet detection, has spent considerable time analyzing the trajectory data from 3I Atlas. Her conclusions are carefully worded, but profoundly unsettling. The object displays navigational behavior that requires either advanced knowledge of our solar system's gravitational, ENVIR, ONMENT, or real-time adaptive course correction capabilities. Neither characteristic is typical of natural interstellar objects. The implications of this assessment extend far beyond simple anomalous physics. If 3I Atlas possesses advanced knowledge of our solar system, it suggests prior reconnaissance detailed mapping of planetary positions, gravitational fields, and orbital mechanics that would require extensive observation over long periods of time. This isn't the kind of information that a random interstellar object would possess by chance. But if 3I Atlas has been here before, or if it originates from intelligences that have studied our solar system extensively, then its current approach to Mars takes on entirely different significance. It's no longer a scientific curiosity, but potentially a reconnaissance mission, a return visit, or even a response to some signal or condition that has triggered its arrival. Ancient cultures would have had no doubt about 3I Atlas's purpose. Across civilizations worldwide, objects that moved across the sky in unusual patterns were interpreted as divine messengers, harbingers of change, carriers of cosmic will, agents of forces beyond human understanding. The Babylonians tracked such objects obsessively, believing that their movements carried messages about the fate of kingdoms and the intentions of the gods. The Hebrew tradition speaks of the signs in the heavens that would herald significant cosmic events. The book of Joel describes wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire, and pillars of smoke that would precede great changes in human history. Similar prophetic traditions exist in cultures worldwide, all focusing on unusual, celestial phenomena as harbingers of transformation. What is particularly striking about these ancient traditions is their consistent association between cosmic messengers and the Red Planet. Babylonian texts describe Nergal's herald, objects that approached Mars as harbingers of war and cosmic judgment. Hindu astronomy speaks of Mangala's messenger, celestial phenomena that appeared near Mars during periods of great change and upheaval. Could 3I Atlas represent a modern fulfillment of these ancient prophetic patterns? Its approach toward Mars, timed with increasing precision as our instruments track its trajectory, seems almost designed to focus human attention on the Red Planet at this particular moment in our technological development. We're now capable of detailed Mars exploration, sophisticated atmospheric analysis, and even sample return missions capabilities that didn't exist even a few decades ago. The timing raises uncomfortable questions about coincidence versus design. Why would an interstellar visitor arrive precisely when humanity has developed the technology to study Mars in unprecedented detail? Why would its trajectory target the one planet in our solar system that has consistently been associated with cosmic warfare, divine judgment, and civilizational collapse? Dr. Abraham Loeb, the chair of Harvard's Astronomy Department, has suggested that we should consider the possibility that some interstellar objects might be artificial probes or artifacts from other civilizations exploring our cosmic neighborhood. His analysis of Oumuamua's unusual characteristics led him to conclude that its behavior was more consistent with artificial origin than natural processes. If Loeb's assessment applies to 3I Atlas, then we're not just witnessing an astronomical phenomenon, but potentially the first confirmed contact with technology from beyond our solar system. The object as precise navigation toward Mars could represent an investigation of the Red Planet by intelligences whose interest in our cosmic neighborhood extends far beyond casual exploration. But there's an even more disturbing possibility. What if 3I Atlas isn't investigating Mars for the first time, but returning to complete unfinished business? The geological evidence suggests that Mars experienced catastrophic changes in its past: the loss of its atmosphere, the evaporation of its oceans, the transformation from a potentially habitable world to a frozen desert. If these changes weren't entirely natural, if they resulted from some form of cosmic intervention, then 3IATLA's approach might represent the return of whatever forces were responsible for Mars' transformation. Ancient myths worldwide describe cosmic wars that reshaped entire worlds, divine judgments that could sterilize planets, weapons that burned away atmospheres and boiled away oceans. These stories have always been interpreted as metaphorical or mythological, but what if they preserve memories of literal events, planetary-scale interventions that our ancestors witnessed from afar and encoded in their most sacred traditions? The isotopic signatures in Mars' atmosphere that suggest nuclear processes, the mineral deposits that indicate massive heat events, the geological evidence of rapid atmospheric loss, all of these could be consistent with deliberate planetary sterilization rather than natural evolutionary processes. As 3I Atlas continues its approach, we're forced to confront questions that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about our place in the cosmos. Are we witnessing a natural astronomical event, or the return of intelligences that have been operating in our solar system far longer than human civilization has existed? Is Mars a dead world waiting for scientific study, or a quarantined planet whose isolation is about to end? The messenger from the void carries its secrets in the mathematics of its trajectory, in the precision of its navigation, in the unmistakable intentionality of its destination. Whether it brings knowledge or judgment, salvation or catastrophe, may depend on whether we be prepared to acknowledge that we are not alone and that we may never have been. In the deep radio silence of space, where electromagnetic waves travel for eons without encountering anything more complex than hydrogen atoms, our most sensitive instruments strain to hear whispers from the cosmic void. But as 3I Atlas continues its approach toward Mars, radio telescopes around the world are detecting something that should and exist: structured electromagnetic emissions that seem to correlate with the visitor as trajectory changes. The signals are faint, buried deep in the background noise of cosmic radiation, but they display patterns that natural phenomena shouldn't produce. Dr. Jill Tarter, former director of the SETI Institute, has spent decades listening for exactly this kind of anomaly electromagnetic signatures that might indicate intelligence behind apparently natural astronomical objects. What we're seeing from 3I Atlas is unprecedented, she reports in carefully measured tones. Radio emissions that pulse in regular intervals, with frequency modulations that suggest information encoding rather than random electromagnetic noise. If this were coming from Earth, we'd classify it immediately as an artificial signal. The emissions were first detected by the Arecibo Observatory during routine monitoring of 3I Atlas's approach trajectory. Initially dismissed as terrestrial interference, the signals gained attention when they were independently confirmed by radio. Telescopes in Australia and Chile facilities separated by thousands of miles, making terrestrial contamination nearly impossible. More disturbing than the signals themselves is their timing. The electromagnetic pulses appear to correlate with 3I Atlas's trajectory adjustments, as if the object is broadcasting navigation data or receiving course corrections from some distant source. Each time ground-based telescopes observe a change in the visitor's trajectory, radio monitors detect a corresponding burst of structured electromagnetic activity. Dr. Dan Wertheimer, director of the Trichome project at UC Berkeley, has applied sophisticated signal analysis software to the 3I Atlas emissions. His findings suggest complexity far beyond random cosmic noise. The signal structure shows mathematical relationships that indicate intentional encoding. We're seeing prime number sequences, mathematical constants, and what appears to be positional data that could represent coordinates or navigational information. But perhaps most unsettling is where these signals seem to be directed. Rather than broadcasting omnidirectionally into space, as you might expect from a beacon or distress signal, the 3I Atlas emissions appear to be tightly focused, aimed specifically at Mars. The European Space Agency's Mars Express Orbiter has confirmed that it periodically receives radio transmissions that match the frequency and modulation patterns of the 3I ATLA signals. These aren't random electromagnetic echoes, but directed communications that suggest the visitor is actively attempting to establish contact with something on or around the red planet. The implications are staggering, admits Dr. Monica Grady, a planetary scientist who has spent years studying Mars exploration data. If 3I Atlas is attempting to communicate with Mars, it suggests either active technology on the planet's surface or subsurface, or some form of intelligence that we haven't detected through conventional exploration. The possibility that Mars might harbor active technology, perhaps buried beneath the surface or hidden in locations our rovers haven't explored, forces us to reconsider everything we think we know about the red planet's current state. While we found extensive evidence of Mars' watery past and potential for ancient life, the idea that something might still be active challenges our fundamental assumptions about planetary death and sterility. Even more intriguingly, analysis of the signal patterns suggests that 3I Atlas might be receiving responses. The electromagnetic emissions show variations and modulations that appear to be adaptive, changing in response to external input. This kind of interactive communication pattern implies not just a transmitter, but an active dialogue between the interstellar visitor and something in the Mars system. Dr. Seth Shostak, senior astronomer at the SETI Institute, has been analyzing the temporal patterns of these apparent communications. His findings suggest a complex exchange of information that goes far beyond simple identification signals. We're seeing data streams that could represent detailed technical specifications, coordinate systems, perhaps even cultural or scientific information exchange. The bandwidth and complexity suggest intelligences with technological capabilities comparable to or exceeding our own. But the signals raise as many questions as they answer. If 3I Atlas is communicating with active intelligence on Mars, why haven't our decades of robotic exploration detected any evidence of such technology? Are we looking in the wrong places, using inadequate detection methods, or is the Martian intelligence deliberately concealing itself from our reconnaissance efforts? Recent analysis of archived data from previous Mars missions has revealed anomalous electromagnetic activity that might have been overlooked in initial studies. The Mars Global Surveyor detected periodic radio emissions from the planet's subsurface that were initially attributed to natural geological processes, but when reanalyzed using modern signal processing techniques, these emissions show structure and periodicity that could indicate artificial origin. Even more intriguingly, some of these historical anomalies appear to have been responses to specific events, increases in electromagnetic activity following solar flares, changes in signal patterns during dust storms, variations that suggest active monitoring and response to environmental conditions. This kind of adaptive behavior is exactly what you expect from technological systems designed to survive in Mars' harsh environment. The Viking lander's biological experiments may have detected more than microbial metabolism. Recent reanalysis of the electromagnetic interference patterns recorded during the labeled release experiments reveals structured radio emissions that coincided with the detection of biological activity. Could the life detected by Viking have been not just microbial, but part of a larger technological ecosystem hidden beneath the Martian surface? As 3I Atlas continues its approach, the signals in the static grow stronger and more complex. Radio telescopes around the world are detecting increasing electromagnetic activity from both the visitor and Mars itself, as if the approach is triggering awakening responses from long dormant systems. The conversations between worlds are being conducted in languages of mathematics and physics that transcend the barriers of biology and chemistry. But the content of these cosmic dialogues remains encrypted in patterns too complex for our current understanding to decode. We are eavesdropping on communications between intelligences that may have been operating in our solar system far longer than human civilization has existed. Whether they speak of reunion or invasion, of scientific exchange or cosmic judgment, remains hidden in the static of space waiting for the moment when 3I Atlas finally reaches its intended destination. The red planet is no longer silent. It's talking back. In the gleaming laboratories of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, scientists work on humanity's most ambitious dream, transforming Mars into a second Earth. Project proposals fill filing cabinets with detailed plans for atmospheric thickening, polar ice cap melting, and the introduction of extremophile organisms that could begin the long process of making the red planet habitable for human life. It's a vision that could take centuries to accomplish, requiring technology and resources on a scale never before attempted. But what if someone has already tried? The terraforming proposals for Mars all center on the same basic challenge: how to restore the thick atmosphere that geological evidence suggests the planet once possessed. Current plans involve releasing greenhouse gases into the thin Martian air, melting the polar ice caps to release water vapor, and perhaps even colliding asteroids with the surface to add mass and heat to the planetary system. Dr. Robert Zubrin, founder of the Mars Society and one of the most vocal proponents of Mars terraforming, has calculated that the process could theoretically be completed in several hundred years using technology only slightly more advanced than what we possess today. Mars has all the raw materials necessary for a thick, breathable atmosphere, he explains. The carbon dioxide locked in the polar ice caps, the water ice scattered throughout the soil, the mineral resources needed to support complex chemistry. The planet could be habitable again, but the word again carries profound implications. If Mars could be habitable again, it suggests it was habitable before, and the geological evidence overwhelmingly supports this conclusion. Mars once had oceans, rivers, a thick atmosphere, and possibly even life. The red planet we see today is not its natural state, but the result of some catastrophic transformation that stripped away its habitability over relatively short geological timescales. What caused this transformation remains one of the great mysteries of planetary science. The conventional explanation involves atmospheric loss due to Mars' weak magnetic field and low gravity, which allowed solar wind to gradually strip away the atmosphere over millions of years. But some researchers suggest the process might have been more sudden, more catastrophic, and possibly not entirely natural. The isotopic evidence that Dr. John Brandenburg has identified in the Martian atmosphere tells a story of nuclear processes on a planetary scale. The xenon isotope ratios suggest massive nuclear reactions that would have released enormous amounts of energy into the atmosphere, potentially causing rapid atmospheric loss through a process that has no known natural equivalent. The isotopic signatures are consistent with planetary-scale nuclear events, Brandenburg maintains. Either Mars experienced natural uranium fission reactions on a scale never observed elsewhere in the solar system, or something artificially induced nuclear processes that fundamentally altered the planet's atmospheric chemistry. If the latter explanation is correct, it implies that Mars didn't lose its atmosphere through natural evolution, but was deliberately sterilized to reformed in reverse, transformed from a habitable world into the barren desert we see today. The implications are staggering. Someone possessed the technology to destroy the habitability of an entire planet. But who would have such capability, and why would they use it? Ancient myths worldwide describe weapons that could destroy entire worlds, devouring armaments capable of burning away atmospheres, boiling away oceans, reducing thriving civilizations to ash and dust. The Sanskrit epics describe Brahmastra weapons that could burn the entire universe, creating fires that would consume all creation. Similar descriptions appear in cultures that had no contact with Hindu civilization, suggesting these stories might preserve memories of actual planetary-scale destruction rather than mythological fancy. The European Space Agency's Mars Express has detected mineral formations on Mars that are consistent with exposure to extreme heat events, not the gradual heating and cooling of normal geological processes, but sudden, intense thermal episodes that would have required energy sources far beyond anything available through natural Martian geology. Some of these heat-altered minerals are distributed in patterns that do and correspond to impact sites or volcanic activity. Instead, they appear to be concentrated in regions that show other signs of artificial modification areas where the landscape preserves geometric formations that could represent the ruins of ancient construction projects. If Mars was once inhabited by a technological civilization, the planet's transformation from habitable world to frozen desert takes on entirely different significance. Rather than natural planetary evolution, it could represent the outcome of cosmic warfare, a conflict that resulted in the complete sterilization of an entire world and the extinction of whatever civilization once called it home. Dr. Christopher McKay, a planetary scientist at NASA's Ames Research Center, has studied the feasibility of rapid planetary sterilization using advanced technology. His calculations suggest that sufficiently powerful nuclear weapons, deployed strategically in a planet's atmosphere, could trigger runaway atmospheric loss that would render a world uninhabitable within decades rather than millions of years. The physics are straightforward, McKay explains. If you can inject enough energy into a planet's upper atmosphere, you can accelerate atmospheric escape beyond the point where the planet can retain its air. It would be like artificially creating the kind of atmospheric stripping that normally takes geological ages, but compressed into a human timescale. But the technology required for such planetary sterilization would be far beyond anything in humanity's current arsenal. It would require energy sources, delivery systems, and coordination capabilities that suggest civilization-level technological development, possibly including space-based infrastructure and interplanetary transportation systems. As 3I Atlas approaches Mars, we are forced to confront the possibility that we are witnessing the return of the same forces that once transformed Mars from a living world into a sterile desert. If the visitor carries technology capable of planetary scale, terraforming or de-terraforming, its arrival could herald either the restoration of Mars' lost habitability or the extension of its sterilization to other worlds in our solar system. The terraformer's dilemma is not just technical but ethical. If someone once possessed the power to destroy the habitability of entire planets, what responsibilities come with that capability? And if such forces are returning to our solar system, what does their arrival mean for Earth's own future? Our dreams of transforming Mars into a second Earth may be nothing more than attempts to reverse engineering that was deliberately destroyed by intelligences whose power and allegiances, whose power and purposes we can barely comprehend. The red planet waits in its artificial sterility, a monument to the consequences of cosmic conflict and a warning about the fragility of worlds that dare to harbor life. The terraformers may be coming home. April 6, 2019, NASA's InSight lander, sitting motionless on the Martian surface in the Elysium Planitia region, detected something that shouldn't have been there. Its ultra-sensitive seismometer, designed to monitor the planet's internal geology, recorded a seismic event unlike anything in the mission's extensive database of expected Martian activity. The signal lasted exactly 42 minutes and 13 seconds, far longer than any impact event or structural collapse should produce. Its frequency characteristics didn't match tectonic activity, thermal cracking, or any other known geological process on Mars. Most disturbing of all, the signal appeared to originate from directly beneath the lander, as if something massive had awakened in the deep subsurface layers of the planet. Dr. Philippe Lagnan, principal investigator for InSight's seismic monitoring system, has spent years analyzing earthquake patterns on both Earth and Mars. His initial reaction to the April 6th signal was bewilderment. The duration and frequency profile don't match any known geological process. It's as if something mechanical activated beneath the surface, something large, complex, and previously dormant. The signal showed characteristics that seismologists associate with artificial rather than natural sources. Instead of the sharp onset and gradual decay typical of earthquakes or impacts, the April 6th event displayed what appeared to be structured activity, periods of intense vibration, alternating with quieter intervals and patterns that suggested operational cycles rather than random geological processes. Even more mysteriously, the signal appeared to trigger secondary responses across the Martian surface. Other seismic monitoring stations detected sympathetic vibrations that seemed to propagate through the planet's subsurface in organized patterns, as if the initial event had activated a network of connected systems buried beneath the Martian crust. Dr. Suzanne Smuraker, InSight's deputy principal investigator, coordinated analysis of the anomalous signal with seismology experts from around the world. Their unanimous conclusion was that the event didn't fit any established model of Martian seismic activity. We're seeing organized, sustained vibrations that suggest complex mechanical processes operating beneath the surface. The signal characteristics are more consistent with large-scale machinery than geological phenomena. But what kind of machinery could operate in the harsh subsurface environment of Mars, buried beneath miles of rock and frozen soil, apparently dormant for extended periods before suddenly activating with enough force to register on surface seismometers? The timing of the anomalous signal adds another layer of mystery. April 6, 2019 was less than 6 months after the initial detection of 3IATLA's unusual trajectory toward Mars. If the approaching interstellar visitor had been transmitting signals toward the red planet, as radio telescope observations suggested, could those communications have triggered awakening responses from buried systems that had been dormant for geological ages? Analysis of archived seismic data from previous Mars missions revealed that similar anomalous signals had been detected before, but dismissed as instrumental errors or misclassified natural events. The Viking landers recorded unexplained vibrations during their biological experiments, rhythmic pulses that coincided with the detection of metabolic activity in Martian soil samples. The Mars Global Surveyor detected gravitational anomalies that suggested large, geometrically regular voids beneath specific regions of the planet's surface. Most intriguingly, these historical anomalies seem to cluster around the same geographical regions that displayed surface features suggesting artificial construction: the geometric formations in Cydonia, the straight-line structures near the polar regions, the mineral deposits that indicated exposure to artificial heat sources. Dr. Richard Hoagland's analysis of the InSight data revealed another disturbing pattern. The subsurface vibrations seemed to propagate along specific corridors beneath the Martian surface, following linear paths that did not correspond to known geological structures, but did align with some of the surface geometric anomalies that had puzzled researchers for decades. The seismic energy isn't spreading randomly through the planet's interior, Hoagland observed. It's following what appear to be artificial channels or conduits, as if there is a constructed infrastructure beneath the surface that is guiding the propagation of mechanical energy. Recent reanalysis of ground-penetrating radar data from various Mars missions has revealed extensive networks of geometrically regular voids beneath the planet's surface, empty spaces, arranged in patterns that natural geological processes rarely produce. Some of these subsurface structures extend for hundreds of miles, forming what appears to be a planet-wide network of tunnels, chambers, and possibly even transportation corridors. If these subsurface structures are artificial, they would represent engineering projects on a scale that dwarfs anything in human experience. Underground complexes that span continents, built to withstand the harsh Martian environment for geological time periods. The existence of such infrastructure would explain both the anomalous seismic signals and the geometric surface features that have puzzled Mars researchers for decades. But who could have built such massive underground installations? And why would they remain dormant until awakened by signals from an approaching interstellar visitor? The InSight lander continues to monitor Martian seismic activity, and the signals are becoming more frequent and more complex as 3I Atlas approaches its destination. Each anomalous event displays the same structured characteristics: organized mechanical activity rather than random geological processes, propagating through what appears to be an extensive underground network that spans significant portions of the planet. Dr. Lagnan's most recent analysis suggests that the subsurface activity is intensifying in direct correlation with 3I Atlas's approach trajectory. We're seeing activation patterns that suggest preparation or awakening processes. Whatever is generating these signals appears to be responding to the approaching visitor with increasing levels of organized activity. The Marsquake that made no sense may have been the first indication that Mars is not the dead world we assumed, but a sleeping one waiting for the right signal, the right visitor, the right moment to awaken from eons of dormancy and resume operations that were interrupted by some cosmic catastrophe lost to the depths of time. The red planet stirs in its ancient slumber, and the approaching stranger from the void may hold the key to understanding what has been waiting there all along. In the smoke-stained caves of ancient India, scribes recorded stories that seem impossible tales of weapons that could burn entire cities with the brilliance of 10,000 suns, devices that created pillars of fire reaching to heaven, armaments that could poison the earth and sky for generations. These weren't the bronze swords and wooden shields of ancient warfare, but weapons that could devastate whole regions with power that defied human understanding. The Sanskrit epics, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, describe the Brahmastra, ultimate weapons wielded by gods and heroes in cosmic conflicts that reshaped the very heavens. But as modern science examines these ancient texts with increasing sophistication, the descriptions begin to sound less like mythology and more like technical manuals for technology beyond our current capabilities. When the Brahmastra was invoked, there was neither day nor night, neither sun nor stars, one passage describes. The earth shook, mountains trembled, and all living things were consumed by the terrible fire that burned without fuel and could not be extinguished by water. The text continues with details that read like accounts of nuclear detonation, intense heat that instantly vaporized water, radiation that made survivors lose their hair and fingernails, and aftermath where nothing would grow for years. Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, father of the atomic bomb, was deeply familiar with these Sanskrit texts. After witnessing the first nuclear detonation at Trinity Site in 1945, he famously quoted the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds." But in private conversations, Oppenheimer went further, suggesting that the ancient texts might preserve memories of nuclear technology from previous civilizations. It is not impossible that some civilization attained nuclear capability in the distant past, and that these weapons were actually used. But the Sanskrit texts describe weapons far more sophisticated than simple nuclear devices. The Vimana Shastra details flying vehicles that could travel between worlds, powered by what the texts call Mercury engines, and capable of both atmospheric and spaceflight. These vehicles carried weapons that could target individual cities or entire planets, suggesting technology that could conduct warfare on interplanetary scales. Similar descriptions appear in cultures that had no contact with ancient India. The Book of Ezekiel describes wheels within wheels that moved through the sky with the sound of rushing water, carrying divine fire that could consume entire armies. The Celtic legends speak of the cauldron of rebirth and the lightning spear of law weapons that could devastate whole regions and were said to come from the other world, the realm beyond earthly existence. Even more intriguingly, many of these myths describe not just weapons, but cosmic wars, conflicts between divine beings that played out across multiple worlds and could reshape entire planetary systems. The Norse Ragnarok describes the twilight of the gods as a conflict that would consume not just Earth, but the entire cosmic order, involving weapons that could burn away the very foundations of reality. The Hindu concept of cyclical time suggests that such cosmic wars have occurred multiple times throughout history, with each cycle ending in the complete destruction of the previous world system. The Puranas describe how advanced civilizations rise and fall in these cosmic cycles, with each destruction so complete that only mythic memories survive to the next iteration. But what if these aren't myths at all? What if they preserve accurate accounts of interplanetary warfare conducted with technology that could sterilize entire worlds? The isotopic evidence Dr. John Brandenburg has identified in the Martian atmosphere suggests nuclear processes on a planetary scale, exactly the kind of destruction the ancient texts describe as possible with advanced divine weapons. The xenon isotope ratios indicate nuclear reactions massive enough to alter an entire planet's atmospheric chemistry, the kind of devastation that could transform a habitable world into a barren desert. Archaeological evidence on Earth suggests that human civilization has experienced multiple periods of advanced technological development followed by catastrophic collapse. Sites like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley show evidence of sophisticated urban planning, advanced metallurgy, and possibly even nuclear destruction areas of vitrified stone that could only have been created by extreme heat, far beyond anything available to Bronze Age civilizations. The Libyan desert glass, scattered across thousands of square miles of North African sand, represents silica fused at temperatures exceeding those of volcanic processes. Similar glass formations exist in other desert regions worldwide, always in areas associated with ancient myths of divine destruction and cosmic warfare. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of these ancient weapon myths is their consistent association with Mars and other planets. The Sanskrit texts describe conflicts that involved beings from different worlds, with the Red Planet specifically identified as one of the battlegrounds in cosmic wars between divine forces. The weapons described weren't limited to terrestrial use. They were capable of interplanetary destruction. The Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, describes cosmic battles that resulted in the destruction of entire worlds, with specific mention of conflicts involving Nergal, the god associated with Mars. These weren't metaphorical spiritual conflicts, but literal descriptions of warfare that could devastate planetary systems and reshape the cosmic order. If advanced civilizations once possessed weapons capable of planetary-scale destruction, the current sterile state of Mars takes on entirely different significance. Rather than natural atmospheric loss through gradual processes, the red planet could represent the outcome of deliberate sterilization, the use of weapons of the gods to transform a living world into a dead one. As 3I Atlas approaches Mars, we are forced to confront the possibility that we are witnessing the return of forces that once wielded such devastating power. If the visitor carries technology descended from the weapons described in ancient texts, its arrival could herald either the restoration of Mars' lost habitability or the extension of its sterilization to other worlds in our solar system. The weapons of the gods may not be myth, but history-accurate accounts of technology so advanced it seemed magical to primitive observers. Power so vast it could reshape entire planetary systems. And now, after eons of cosmic silence, that power may be returning to the world it once transformed. The red planet waits in its artificial sterility, a monument to the consequences of divine warfare, and a warning about what happens to worlds that become battlegrounds for forces beyond mortal comprehension. In the cold mathematics of planetary sterilization, the destruction of Mars represents a technological achievement of staggering sophistication. To strip away an entire planet's atmosphere, to boil away its oceans, to transform a living world into a frozen desert, this requires energy manipulation and delivery, systems that dwarf anything in humanity's current arsenal. But as 3I Atlas continues its precisely calculated approach toward the red planet, we must confront a possibility that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about safety in our cosmic neighborhood. What if the visitor carries the same technology that once destroyed Mars? Dr. Christopher McKay has as analysis of rapid atmospheric loss mechanisms suggests that sufficiently advanced technology could sterilize a planet within decades rather than geological ages. The process would require strategic injection of energy into a planet's upper atmosphere, triggering runaway atmospheric escape that would strip away the protective envelope of gases that makes life possible. The physics are well understood, McKay explains with disturbing clinical precision. If you can heat a planet's atmospheric cap beyond its escape velocity, the gases will dissipate into space at an exponential rate. What normally takes millions of years can be accomplished in decades if you have sufficient energy sources and strategic deployment capabilities. But the technology required for such planetary sterilization transcends anything approaching human capabilities. Current nuclear arsenals, even if deployed with perfect efficiency, could devastate civilizations, but couldn't fundamentally alter planetary atmospheric composition. The energy requirements for true planetary sterilization would demand power sources equivalent to stellar output, delivery systems capable of precision targeting across planetary scales, and coordination infrastructure that could maintain operations for extended periods. This is exactly the kind of technology that advanced interstellar civilizations might possess, beings capable of crossing the void between stars, of navigating complex gravitational fields with precision, of operating across timescales that span geological ages. If 3 IATLAs represents such technology, its approach toward Mars could herald not exploration or communication, but the resumption of interrupted sterilization protocols. The isotopic evidence suggests that Mars experienced nuclear processes far beyond anything that natural radioactive decay could produce. The xenon isotope ratios indicate fission reactions massive enough to fundamentally alter the planet's atmospheric chemistry, exactly what you'd expect from weapons designed to strip away planetary habitability through controlled nuclear processes. But nuclear sterilization would be just one approach available to sufficiently advanced civilizations. Dr. Freeman Dyson's theoretical work on stellar engineering suggests that truly advanced societies might possess the capability to manipulate stellar output itself, focusing the energy of entire stars to accomplish planetary-scale construction or destruction projects. If such capabilities exist, the sterilization of Mars could have been accomplished through focused stellar radiation, concentrated solar wind, or even gravitational manipulation that altered the planet's orbital characteristics and magnetic field strength. Any of these approaches could account for the rapid atmospheric loss that geological evidence suggests occurred on Mars. Perhaps most disturbingly, the same technologies that could sterilize Mars could be applied to any planet in our solar system, including Earth. If 3I Atlas carries such capabilities, humanity faces a threat that no terrestrial defense system could address. Planetary-scale weapons deployed by intelligences whose technological superiority makes resistance not just futile, but unimaginable. The targeting of Earth would follow the same strategic principles that governed Mars' destruction. Atmospheric stripping would begin with the upper atmosphere, gradually working downward until the planet could no longer retain the gases necessary for liquid water and complex chemistry. The process would be inexorable, unstoppable by any technology currently available to human civilization. But why would advanced interstellar civilizations engage in planetary sterilization? The answer might lie in the concept of cosmic quarantine, the systematic elimination of worlds that could potentially develop into competitive technological civilizations. If the galaxy operates according to principles of controlled development, where only certain civilizations are permitted to advance beyond planetary boundaries, then Mars might represent an example of quarantine enforcement. Dr. Robin Hansen's analysis of the Fermi paradox suggests that the galaxy's apparent emptiness might result from great filter events that prevent most civilizations from achieving interstellar capabilities. But what if these filter events aren't natural evolutionary bottlenecks, but deliberate interventions by established galactic civilizations that eliminate potential competitors before they can become threats? From this perspective, Mars sterilization becomes a case study in cosmic population control, the systematic elimination of a world that was developing toward technological sophistication. Earth's current rapid technological advancement, particularly our growing capabilities in space exploration and nuclear technology, might trigger similar intervention protocols. The timing of 3IATLAS's approach supports this interpretation. The visitor arrives precisely as humanity develops the technological capabilities that could eventually lead to interstellar expansion, advanced space exploration, nuclear energy, sophisticated computing and communication systems. If cosmic quarantine protocols activate when civilizations reach certain technological thresholds, humanity may have recently crossed such a threshold. Ancient myths worldwide describe cosmic cycles where advanced civilizations are periodically destroyed by divine intervention, followed by long periods of primitive development before the next cycle begins. These stories might preserve accurate accounts of galactic population, control systematic sterilization of worlds that develop beyond permitted limits, ensuring that only authorized civilizations achieve true interstellar capabilities. If this interpretation is correct, 31ATLAS's approach toward Mars could represent reconnaissance preparation for Earth's sterilization. The visitor might be confirming the effectiveness of previous interventions on Mars while simultaneously evaluating Earth as current technological development and threat potential. The worst-case scenario extends beyond simple planetary destruction to the systematic elimination of intelligence itself from our region of the galaxy. If advanced civilizations view technological development as an infection that must be contained, then every world that shows signs of advancing beyond primitive states becomes a target for intervention. Humanity's dreams of interstellar expansion, of cosmic exploration and galactic civilization could be nothing more than naive fantasies in a universe where such ambitions are systematically crushed by forces whose power and ruthlessness exceed our ability to comprehend or resist. The red planet stands as a monument to the consequences of reaching too far, of developing too quickly, of attracting the attention of intelligences that view emerging civilizations not as potential partners, but as threats to be eliminated before they can become truly dangerous. As 3I Atlas continues its approach, we must prepare for the possibility that we are witnessing not first contact, but final judgment, the arrival of forces that have already demonstrated their willingness and capability to sterilize entire worlds in service of cosmic order that tolerates no competition. The worst-case scenario is not invasion or conquest, but extinction complete, methodical, and as inevitable as the approach of the stranger from the void. In the deep strata of Mars, buried beneath 4 billion years of accumulated dust and geological change, may lie evidence of civilizations so ancient that they predate the formation of Earth as first complex life forms. This is the frontier of cosmic archaeology, the search for artifacts and ruins that could rewrite our understanding of intelligence, technology, and the deep history of our solar system. Unlike terrestrial archaeology, which deals with human timescales measured in thousands of years, cosmic archaeology operates across geological epochs. The civilizations it seeks to uncover would have risen and fallen while Earth was still a molten ball of fire. Their technologies developed and deployed across timescales that make human history appear as brief as a single heartbeat. Dr. Paul Davies, a theoretical physicist at Arizona State University, has pioneered the mathematical frameworks for detecting evidence of ancient technological civilizations. His calculations suggest that sufficiently advanced societies could leave traces, detectable across geological time isotopic signatures in planetary atmospheres, altered mineral compositions in subsurface rocks, even artificial structures designed to survive for millions of years. We're looking for technological fossils, Davies explains. Just as biological fossils preserve evidence of ancient life forms, technological artifacts could preserve evidence of ancient civilizations. The key is understanding what kinds of traces advanced technology would leave and developing the instruments capable of detecting them. The isotopic anomalies in Mars' atmosphere that Dr. John Brandenburg has identified could represent exactly this kind of technological fossil nuclear signatures preserved across geological time, evidence of civilizations that possessed atomic technology when Earth's most complex life forms were still single-celled organisms. But isotopic signatures are just one category of potential evidence. Advanced civilizations would have required materials for construction, energy sources for their technology, and waste management systems for their industrial processes. All of these activities would leave detectable traces in planetary geology, creating artificial mineral formations and chemical signatures that would persist long after the civilizations themselves had vanished. The European Space Agency, SMARS, Express has detected mineral formations that are difficult to explain through natural geological processes deposits of rare earth elements in concentrations and distributions that suggest artificial concentration and processing. These formations appear in regions that also display geometric surface features, as if the mineral extraction sites were connected to construction projects that spanned continental scales. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed what appears to be extensive underground infrastructure on Mars' networks of geometrically regular voids that could represent the preserved remains of subterranean cities, transportation systems, or industrial complexes. The scale of these subsurface structures is staggering, suggesting civilizations capable of engineering projects that would dwarf anything in human experience. The underground complexes we're detecting would have required millions of years to construct, observes Dr. Maria Zuber, a planetary scientist at MIT. We re-looking at evidence of sustained technological development across timescales that human civilization has barely begun to comprehend. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of potential Martian ruins is their apparent age. Radiometric dating of surface features suggests that the geometric formations in regions like Cydonia are incredibly ancient, possibly dating to the period when Mars still possessed a thick atmosphere and liquid water oceans. This would place their construction at a time when conditions on Mars were similar to those on early Earth. If Mars harbored advanced technological civilizations during its habitable period, their development would have followed trajectories completely independent of any processes on Earth. This represents the possibility of a second genesis of intelligence in our solar system, proof that technological civilization is not a unique accident of Earth's evolution, but a common outcome wherever suitable conditions exist. The implications extend far beyond simple confirmation of ancient life. If Mars developed technological civilizations that achieved interplanetary capabilities, they would have been aware of Earth during its early development. They might have studied our planet, possibly even influenced its evolution in ways that shaped the eventual emergence of human civilization. Ancient myths worldwide describe beings from the heavens who taught primitive humans agriculture, astronomy, mathematics, and engineering. These stories, found in cultures separated by vast distances and time periods, consistently describe the teachers as coming from the red star or the red planet. Could these myths preserve accurate memories of contact with Martian civilizations during their technological peak? The Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime stories describe the sky heroes who came from the Red Wanderer, bringing knowledge and technology to Earth, but also warning of cosmic dangers and the fragility of worlds that develop too quickly. Similar themes appear in Mesopotamian myths of the Anunnaki, Hindu stories of the Devas, and Native American legends of star people who traveled between worlds. If these myths preserve historical accuracy rather than fantasy, they suggest that Earth has been under observation or influence from Martian civilizations for far longer than human recorded history. Our own technological development might not be entirely independent evolution, but could include guidance, warnings, or even genetic modifications inherited from beings whose homeworld died before human civilization began. The cosmic archaeology of Mars faces unique challenges. Unlike Earth, where biological processes continuously recycle materials and obscure ancient artifacts, Mars' sterile environment could preserve technological remains for geological time periods. But this same preservation occurs beneath layers of accumulated dust and debris that make surface detection nearly impossible. The most significant archaeological discoveries on Mars may require subsurface exploration drilling operations that could uncover artifacts buried beneath miles of accumulated sediment. Such operations would be technically challenging and enormously expensive, but could yield evidence that would fundamentally alter human understanding of intelligence, technology, and our place in cosmic history. As 3I Atlas approaches Mars, we must consider the possibility that this interstellar visitor knows something about Martian archaeology that our surface-based exploration has barely begun to uncover. If advanced civilizations once operated in our solar system, they would have left records, monuments, perhaps even technological installations designed to survive across cosmic timescales. The approach of an interstellar visitor to a world that may harbor the ruins of ancient civilizations suggests possibilities that transcend simple exploration or contact. 3I Atlas might be returning to sites of cosmic archaeological significance, seeking artifacts or information preserved from civilizations that vanished before Earth's complex life began to evolve. The red planet keeps its deepest secrets buried beneath layers of time and dust, but those secrets may include evidence of intelligence technology and cosmic tragedy that could illuminate both our past and our future in the vast darkness of space. Beyond the realm of ordinary matter, in the shadowy territories where dark matter and exotic physics operate according to rules we only beginning to understand, forces may be at work that render our convention, our understanding of planetary systems incomplete. As 3I Atlas continues its precisely calculated approach toward Mars, we must consider the possibility that its navigation is guided not just by visible gravitational fields, but by invisible influences that conventional astronomy has yet to detect. The mystery of dark matter, which comprises roughly 85% of all matter in the universe, suggests that the cosmos operates according to principles far more complex than the simplified models we use to predict planetary motion. This invisible matter interacts gravitationally with ordinary matter, but remains undetectable to our instruments, creating gravitational effects that we can observe but cannot directly study. Dr. Lisa Randall, a theoretical physicist at Harvard, has proposed that dark matter might form complex structures, analogous to ordinary matter-dark matter planets, stars, and even civilizations that exist in parallel with our visible universe, but interact with it only through gravitational effects. If such structures exist, they could influence the motion of objects in our solar system in ways that appear anomalous according to conventional gravitational models. Dark matter isn't necessarily uniform, Randall explains. It could form clumps, streams, and organized structures that would create local gravitational anomalies. These invisible influences could affect the motion of asteroids, comets, and interstellar objects in ways that would appear mysterious if we only account for visible matter. The trajectory adjustments that 3I Atlas has displayed during its approach could result from interaction with such invisible structures. If dark matter forms organized patterns within our solar system concentrations that align with planetary orbits or create gravitational channels between worlds, an interstellar visitor might use these invisible highways to navigate with precision that seems impossible based on visible matter alone. But dark matter interactions represent just one category of invisible influences that could be operating in our cosmic neighborhood. Theoretical physics predicts the existence of additional dimensions beyond the 3 spatial dimensions we can directly perceive. These extra dimensions could harbor forces and fields that influence our reality in subtle but measurable ways. String theory suggests that gravity, uniquely among the fundamental forces, might leak between dimensional boundaries, creating gravitational effects that originate from parallel realities or higher dimensional structures. If advanced civilizations have learned to manipulate these higher dimensional forces, they could influence motion and energy in our three-dimensional space while remaining essentially invisible to our detection methods. The precise navigation that 3I Atlas has demonstrated could result from manipulation of these higher dimensional gravitational fields. Rather than using conventional propulsion that would leave detectable exhaust signatures, the visitor might be employing exotic physics that allows it to surf gravitational currents that exist in dimensions we cannot directly observe. Recent astronomical observations have revealed gravitational anomalies throughout our solar system that CONVENTION AL models cannot fully explain. The Pioneer spacecraft experienced unexplained acceleration toward the Sun during their journey to the outer solar system. The Cassini mission detected gravitational effects near Saturn that didn't match theoretical predictions. These anomalies might indicate the presence of invisible matter or exotic physics operating within our own cosmic neighborhood. Dr. John Anderson, the JPL physicist who first identified the Pioneer anomaly, has suggested that our understanding of gravity itself might be incomplete. We re-seeing effects that don't fit our standard models. Either there are forms of matter we haven't detected, or the laws of physics operate differently on solar system scales than we've assumed. If invisible forces are indeed operating within our solar system, they could explain not just 3IATLAS's anomalous navigation, but other mysteries that have puzzled astronomers for decades. The unusual orbital characteristics of some outer solar system objects, the anomalous behavior of certain comets, even the apparent fine-tuning of planetary orbits that allows Earth to maintain stable, life-supporting conditions. Mars itself displays gravitational anomalies that suggest mass distributions beneath its surface that don't match what we expect from natural geological processes. The European Space Agency's Mars Express has detected what appear to be large, dense objects buried beneath the Martian crust structures. They create localized gravitational effects, but remain invisible to surface-based instruments. These subsurface mass concentrations could represent natural geological formations, but their geometric distribution and density characteristics suggest artificial origin. If advanced civilizations once operated on Mars, they might have constructed massive underground installations that continue to exert gravitational influence, even after the civilizations themselves have vanished. But perhaps the most disturbing possibility is that the invisible forces guiding 3I Atlas originate from intelligences that exist primarily in the realm of dark matter or higher dimensions beings, whose technology and consciousness operate according to physical principles that make them essentially undetectable to conventional observation methods. Such entities would possess capabilities that would appear magical to us, the ability to influence matter and energy in our three-dimensional space while remaining essentially invisible, to manipulate gravitational fields across interstellar distances, to coordinate activities across timescales that span geological ages. Their interest in Mars could relate to structures or installations that exist partially in our reality and partially in dimensions we cannot access. The consistent association between Mars and invisible or divine forces in ancient mythology might preserve accurate observations of such higher dimensional influences. Our ancestors, lacking scientific frameworks for understanding exotic physics, would have interpreted these effects as supernatural or divine gods and demons whose presence could be felt, but not directly observed. As 3I Atlas approaches Mars, the invisible influences that guide its motion may be preparing for something far more significant than simple reconnaissance or scientific study. If the visitor serves intelligences that operate primarily in invisible dimensions, its arrival could herald the emergence of forces that have been manipulating our solar system as development for far longer than human civilization has existed. The signs of the invisible surround us, hidden in gravitational anomalies and unexplained orbital mechanics, in dark matter streams and higher dimensional influences that shape our reality in ways we are only beginning to suspect. And perhaps very soon, these invisible forces will become visible, emerging from the shadows of physics to reveal purposes and capabilities that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about the nature of intelligence and consciousness in the universe. The cosmos may be far more crowded than we've imagined, populated by entities whose existence transcends the narrow band of reality accessible to our instruments and senses. And their attention is turning toward the small, blue world where humanity dreams of exploring the stars, unaware that the stars may already be exploring us. 17 miles long, 11 miles wide, and 7 miles thick Phobos, the larger of Mars' 2 moons, should behave like any other small rocky body in the solar system. But it doesn't. This irregularly shaped satellite orbits closer to its parent planet than any other moon in the solar system, completing one orbit every 7.5 hours, racing across the Martian sky faster than the planet rotates beneath it. But it's not Phobos's unusual orbit that has captured the attention of researchers worldwide. It's the growing body of evidence suggesting that this small moon might not be entirely natural. The speculation began in 1958, when Soviet astrophysicist Iosif Shklovsky calculated that Phobos' orbital decay rate, the gradual spiral inward that should eventually cause it to crash into Mars, was proceeding faster than it should for a solid rocky body. His calculations suggested that Phobos might be hollow, with an internal structure consisting largely of empty space rather than solid rock. The satellite is either very light or hollow, Shklovsky concluded in his groundbreaking analysis. If hollow, it might be artificial. The suggestion that Mars' moon could be an artificial construct seemed preposterous to the scientific community of the time, but Shklovsky's mathematical analysis was unassailable. Something about Phobos didn't behave the way natural satellites should behave. Dr. Fred Singer, an atmospheric physicist who worked on early NASA satellite programs, independently reached similar conclusions about Phobos's anomalous characteristics. His analysis of the moon's gravitational effects on spacecraft suggested an internal structure that was more consistent with artificial construction than natural formation. The European Space Agency's Mars Express mission has provided detailed analysis of Phobos that deepens rather than resolves these mysteries. High-resolution imaging reveals surface features that are difficult to explain through natural processes. Parallel ridges that run in perfectly straight lines across the moon as surface geometric patterns that suggest internal structural elements in what appear to be large regular openings that could represent entrances to interior chambers. Most mysteriously, ground-penetrating radar suggests that Phobos contains large internal voids, empty spaces within the moon that are arranged in geometric patterns rather than the random cavities that natural geological processes typically create. Some of these voids appear to be interconnected, forming what could be a network of chambers and passages within the moon's interior. Dr. John Murray, a planetary scientist at the Open University who has studied Phobos extensively, describes the internal structure as highly unusual for a natural satellite. The void patterns suggest organized internal architecture rather than random geological formation. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Phobos is its composition. Spectroscopic analysis reveals that the moon is made primarily of carbon-rich materials, similar to carbonaceous chondrite meteorites, but with trace elements and isotopic ratios that don't match any known natural sources in the solar system. The material composition suggests either exotic formation processes or artificial construction using materials that have been processed or synthesized rather than naturally accumulated. The surface of Phobos displays impact craters that should have shattered such a small, apparently fragile body, but the moon somehow remains intact despite evidence of massive collisions that should have destroyed it completely. This resilience suggests either a much stronger internal structure than the surface composition would indicate, or some form of self-repair capability that maintains structural integrity despite repeated impacts. Recent analysis of high-resolution images from Mars Express has revealed what appeared to be artificial modifications to natural impact craters on Phobos' surface. Some craters show geometric rim modifications, internal structures that don't match impact formation patterns, and what could be entrance points to subsurface facilities. A monolith of Phobos, a rectangular object roughly 300 feet tall, standing alone on the Moon's surface, has generated particular speculation. While NASA officially classifies it as an unusual but natural rock formation, the object's geometric regularity and isolated position are difficult to explain through conventional geological processes. Dr. Ephraim Palermo, who has conducted detailed photographic analysis of the Phobos monolith, notes that the object displays right-angled geometry and surface characteristics that are more consistent with artificial construction than natural rock formation. Its isolation and geometric precision suggest intentional placement rather than random geological processes. The orbital characteristics of Phobos create additional mysteries. The Moon's rapid orbital period means it rises in the west and sets in the east as seen from Mars, opposite of natural satellite behavior. Its orbit is also gradually decaying, bringing it closer to Mars over time in a pattern that suggests it was originally placed in a higher orbit and is slowly spiraling inward. If Phobos is indeed artificial, it would represent technology on a scale that dwarfs anything in human experience, a constructed moon designed to orbit Mars for geological time periods, possibly serving as an observation post-communication relay, or even a weapon platform positioned to monitor or influence activities on the Martian surface. The timing of increased interest in Phobos coincides with 3I Atlas's approach toward Mars, as the interstellar visitor continues its precisely calculated trajectory toward the red planet observational focus on Mars. Unusual moon has intensified, as if researchers suspect that Phobos might play a role in whatever purpose brings 3I Atlas to our region of the solar system. Ancient myths describe Mars as attended by two companions, Fear and Panic, the sons of the war god who accompanied him into battle. Could these mythological references preserve accurate observations of artificial constructs that orbit Mars, technological installations that have been mistaken for natural moons, but actually serve purposes related to the monitoring or control of the red planet? If Phobos is indeed hollow and artificial, its presence raises profound questions about the history of intelligence in our solar system. Who possessed the technology to construct and deploy artificial moons? How long have such installations been monitoring Mars and possibly Earth? And what is their connection to the interstellar visitor that now approaches with such apparent purpose? The hollow rumor surrounding Phobos may be more than speculation. It could be evidence of technology that predates human civilization by geological ages, artificial constructs that continue to operate according to purposes we can barely begin to comprehend. As 3I Atlas nears its destination, Phobos maintains its rapid orbit around Mars, a possible artificial sentinel watching over a dead world that may not be as empty as we've assumed. The secrets hidden within the hollow moon may soon be revealed, as forces from across the void return to complete whatever purpose brought them to our solar system in the first place. In the shadowed libraries of ancient Alexandria, where scholars debated the nature of reality and the structure of the cosmos, Plato recorded a story that has haunted human imagination for over 2 millennia. The tale of Atlantis' advanced civilization that possessed technology beyond the comprehension of primitive peoples, but which was destroyed in a single day and night by forces that came from the heavens. In a single day and night of misfortune, Plato wrote, the island of Atlantis disappeared in the depths of the sea. But modern analysis of Plato's account suggests something far more complex than a simple natural disaster. The destruction he describes involves fire from the sky, the earth shaking and splitting open, and waters that boiled with unnatural heat phenomena that read more like accounts of planetary-scale warfare than conventional geological catastrophe. Could Plato's Atlantis represent not a lost earthly civilization, but a memory of what happened to Mars? The timing fits disturbingly well. Plato claimed to have received the Atlantis story through a chain of transmission that traced back to Egyptian priests, who preserved records spanning thousands of years. The Egyptian astronomical texts describe periods when the red star appeared much brighter and closer than in modern times, possibly indicating that Mars once followed a different orbital path that brought it much nearer to Earth. If ancient civilizations witnessed the destruction of Mars, either through direct observation or through contact with Martian refugees, traumatic memory might have been preserved in mythological accounts that described the event in terms comprehensible to primitive cultures. The destruction of a distant world would become the sinking of a legendary island. Technology beyond ancient understanding would be described as divine magic. Planetary sterilization would be remembered as punishment by the gods. The Greek philosopher Anaxagoras, writing in the 5th century BCE, claimed that meteors and comets were actually stones falling from other worlds, and that some of these worlds were inhabited by beings with technology superior to anything on Earth. His astronomical theories were considered so heretical that he was charged with impiety and forced into exile. But his core insight that other worlds might harbor advanced civilizations may have been based on knowledge preserved from much earlier sources. Similar themes appear in the prophetic traditions of multiple cultures. The Hebrew prophet Ezekiel described visions of wheels within wheels that moved through the sky with the sound of rushing waters, carrying divine fire that could consume entire armies. The imagery matches descriptions of advanced aircraft or spacecraft, while the divine fire could represent weapons technology that seemed magical to ancient observers. Nostradamus, the 16th century French prophet, whose predictions have been interpreted as foreseeing everything from world wars to space exploration, wrote extensively about objects that would come from the heavens, bringing both knowledge and destruction. His quatrains speak of the great star that would burn for 7 days before bringing about the transformation of human civilization imagery that could describe the approach of an interstellar visitor. From the sky will come a great king of terror, Nostradamus wrote in one of his most famous predictions. He will bring back to life the great king of the Mongols. Before and after Mars reigns happily, the specific mention of Mars in connection with celestial visitors and global transformation takes on new significance as 3I Atlas approaches the red planet. The Hopi prophecies of the American Southwest describe the coming of the blue star Kashina, a celestial visitor that will herald the end of the current world age and the beginning of a new era for humanity. According to Hopi tradition, this visitor will come from the direction of the red star and will bring both destruction and renewal, forcing humanity to choose between spiritual evolution and technological annihilation. These prophetic traditions share remarkable consistency despite emerging from completely separate cultural contexts. They describe celestial visitors that bring advanced technology, cosmic warfare that can reshape entire worlds, and critical periods in human development when contact with superior intelligences forces civilizational transformation. The timing of these prophecies relative to current astronomical events is disturbing. Many ancient traditions describe the current era as approaching the end of a cosmic cycle, a period when the forces that shaped previous world ages would return to determine humanity's future. The arrival of 3I Atlas at precisely the moment when human technology is advancing toward interplanetary capabilities seems to fulfill the prophetic pattern of celestial intervention at critical evolutionary junctures. Dr. Carl Jung's analysis of prophetic and mythological traditions suggested that they might preserve what he called collective memories, psychological imprints of traumatic events that affected entire civilizations and were passed down through cultural transmission across generations. If humanity witnessed the destruction of Mars in the ancient past, the psychological trauma of observing planetary-scale warfare might have created collective memories that resurface in prophetic and mythological accounts. The philosopher Arthur C. Clarke famously observed that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Ancient accounts of divine weapons, celestial visitors, and cosmic warfare might preserve accurate observations of technological capabilities that exceeded the descriptive vocabulary available to primitive cultures. If prophets and philosophers throughout history have been receiving information about cyclical, cosmic events, possibly through direct contact with advanced intelligences, inherited cultural memories, or even psychic perception of future possibilities, their consistent warnings about celestial visitors and planetary transformation take on profound significance as 3IATLA S approaches Mars. The convergence of ancient prophecy with modern astronomical observation suggests that humanity may be approaching one of the critical junctures that philosophers and prophets have long anticipated. The arrival of an interstellar visitor at a world associated with cosmic warfare and divine judgment could represent either the fulfillment of humanity's greatest hopes for cosmic contact, or the realization of our deepest fears about forces beyond our control or comprehension. The philosophers and prophets may have been more accurate than we realized, not predicting the future through supernatural means, but preserving memories of cyclical events that have shaped cosmic history for far longer than human civilization has existed. And now, as their prophecies approach fulfillment, we must prepare for the possibility that we are about to witness the return of forces that have determined the fate of worlds since before Earth as first complex life began to evolve. The red planet awaits its visitor, and humanity awaits the revelation of whether the philosophers and prophets spoke of salvation or judgment, contact or conquest, evolution or extinction. In the rust-colored dust that covers the Martian surface, in the dry riverbeds that once carried water under alien skies, in the thin atmosphere that barely whispers across a world that once roared with weather and life, we see a reflection that should terrify us. Mars is not just another planet, it is Earth's potential future, a cautionary tale written in geological time, a mirror that shows what happens to worlds that lose their way. 4 billion years ago, Mars possessed everything necessary for complex life. Vast oceans that covered much of its northern hemisphere, a thick atmosphere that could retain heat and protect against cosmic radiation, active geology that recycled nutrients and maintained chemical balance, and possibly even the spark of life itself taking hold in warm, shallow seas. Yet today, Mars is a frozen desert where temperatures plunge to minus 195 degrees Fahrenheit, where the atmosphere is so thin that liquid water cannot exist on the surface, where cosmic radiation sterilizes the soil, and any exposed organic compounds break down within hours. The transformation from living world to sterile wasteland represents one of the most complete planetary failures in our solar system's history. Dr. James Casting, a geoscientist at Penn State who studies planetary atmospheres, has calculated the timeline of Mars' decline. The planet lost its magnetic field relatively early in its history, probably due to cooling of its iron core. Without magnetic protection, solar wind gradually stripped away the atmosphere over hundreds of millions of years. But the process may have been accelerated by catastrophic events we don't fully understand. The parallels between ancient Mars and modern Earth are unsettling. Both planets formed at similar distances from the Sun, with similar compositions and similar potential for developing complex atmospheric chemistry. Both possessed liquid water, active geology, and the chemical ingredients necessary for life. The primary difference was size. Mars' smaller mass meant weaker gravity, faster core cooling, and reduced ability to retain atmospheric gases. But Earth faces threats that Mars never encountered. Our planet's magnetic field, which protects us from the solar wind that stripped away Mars' atmosphere, is currently weakening and showing signs of instability. The magnetic poles are shifting at accelerating rates, and some scientists suggest we may be approaching a magnetic reversal event that could temporarily eliminate our protective magnetic shield entirely. During magnetic reversals, Earth's surface would be exposed to the same kind of radiation bombardment that helped sterilize Mars. While such events have occurred multiple times in Earth's past without causing extinction events, they have never occurred during a period when human technology and infrastructure were vulnerable to electromagnetic disruption. Climate change presents another parallel with Mars' decline. Geological evidence suggests that Mars experienced rapid climate transitions that transformed it from a warm, wet world to a frozen desert. While the mechanisms were different: atmospheric loss versus greenhouse gas accumulation, both represent runaway processes that can push planetary systems beyond recoverable tipping points. The carbon dioxide currently being released into Earth's atmosphere at unprecedented rates could trigger feedback loops similar to those that may have accelerated Mars' atmospheric loss. Warming temperatures release methane from permafrost and ocean sediments, creating additional greenhouse heating that releases more methane in an accelerating cycle that could fundamentally alter Earth's atmospheric composition. But perhaps the most disturbing parallel involves the possibility of technological civilization on ancient Mars. If Mars developed advanced civilizations during its habitable period, their eventual extinction represents a failure of intelligence itself to preserve planetary habitability. Despite potential technological sophistication that could have included space travel, advanced energy systems, and planetary engineering, Martian civilization, if it existed, could not prevent their world's transformation into a sterile desert. Human civilization currently faces similar challenges on an accelerated timeline. Our technological development has given us the power to alter Earth's climate, atmosphere, and biological systems on planetary scales, but without the wisdom or coordination necessary to manage such capabilities responsibly. Like potential Martian civilizations, we possess technology that could theoretically preserve our world's habitability, but we seem unable to implement such technology effectively. The isotopic evidence of nuclear processes in Mars' atmosphere takes on particularly ominous significance when viewed as a mirror of Earth's future. If Mars experienced nuclear warfare that contributed to its atmospheric loss and planetary sterilization, it represents the ultimate failure of technological civilization intelligence, advanced enough to develop weapons of planetary destruction, but not wise enough to avoid using them. Human civilization has already demonstrated the capacity for nuclear self-destruction. Our current arsenals could devastate global civilization and trigger environmental changes that would make Earth far less habitable, even if they couldn't duplicate the complete planetary sterilization that Mars apparently experienced. The approach of 3I Atlas toward Mars adds another layer of disturbing parallel. If the interstellar visitor represents forces that contributed to Mars' destruction, its arrival could signal that Earth is approaching the same fate. Alternatively, if 3I Atlas comes to study the remains of Martian civilization, it might be evaluating whether Earth is following the same trajectory toward technological self-destruction. Dr. Carl Sagan's analysis of planetary evolution emphasized that worlds like Earth and Mars exist in a narrow range of conditions that can support complex life. Small changes in atmospheric composition, magnetic field strength, or orbital characteristics can push planets beyond habitability thresholds, creating irreversible transformation toward sterility. The cosmos is littered with failed worlds, Sagan observed, planets that possessed all the ingredients for life, but lost them through processes we're only beginning to understand. Earth's habitability is not guaranteed. It is a temporary condition that requires constant maintenance through geological and biological processes that could be disrupted by natural or artificial events. As we study Mars through increasingly sophisticated robotic missions, we're not just exploring another world, we're examining our own potential future. Every discovery about Mars' atmospheric loss, climate change, and possible technological civilization provides lessons about the fragility of planetary habitability and the challenges facing any species that develops the power to alter its world has fundamental characteristics. The mirror of Mars reflects not just our planet's possible future, but the ultimate test of intelligence itself, whether conscious beings can develop the wisdom to preserve the conditions that allow consciousness to exist. Mars may represent the failure of that test, a world where intelligence arose but could not prevent its own extinction. As 3I Atlas approaches the red planet, we are forced to confront the possibility that we are witnessing the return of forces that have observed this test before on worlds throughout the galaxy and have come to determine whether Earth will succeed where Mars apparently failed. The mirror shows us what we could become. Whether we choose to heed its warning may determine whether human civilization joins the ranks of successful planetary stewards or becomes another cautionary tale written in dust and silence, waiting to be discovered by future visitors from the void. At the boundary where rigorous scientific observation intersects with humanity's oldest stories, where mathematical precision encounters mythological memory, extraordinary possibilities emerge that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality. As 3I Atlas continues its precisely calculated approach toward Mars, we find ourselves in the unprecedented position of watching ancient prophecies unfold with astronomical accuracy. The convergence is unsettling. Modern instruments detect an interstellar visitor navigating toward Mars with precision that suggests advanced technology, while ancient texts worldwide describe celestial messengers that would come from the stars to herald cosmic transformation. Contemporary analysis reveals isotopic signatures in Mars' atmosphere that indicate nuclear processes on a planetary scale, while Sanskrit epics describe weapons capable of burning entire worlds with the fire of 1,000 suns. This intersection between myth and science forces us to confront a possibility that mainstream academia has long dismissed. What if humanity, as old as stories, preserve accurate accounts of cosmic events that our instruments are only now sophisticated enough to detect and verify? Dr. Giorgio de Santillana, a historian of science at MIT, spent decades analyzing ancient astronomical texts and concluded that prehistoric civilizations possessed far more sophisticated understanding of cosmic cycles than conventional archaeology suggests. His analysis of myths worldwide revealed consistent patterns that seemed to encode precise astronomical information about planetary movements, stellar positions, and cosmic events spanning thousands of years. Myth is not primitive science, as Santillana argued. It is sophisticated information encoded in symbolic language that could preserve technical knowledge across cultural boundaries and temporal gaps that would defeat any written records. The mythological accounts of cosmic warfare, planetary destruction, and divine intervention that appear in cultures worldwide may represent exactly this kind of encoded technical information-accurate descriptions of interplanetary conflict, planetary sterilization technology, and cyclical interventions by advanced civilizations preserved in symbolic language that could survive cultural collapse and transmission across millennia. Modern astronomy's detection of anomalous objects, like 3I Atlas, provides the first opportunity in human history to test whether mythological accounts of celestial visitors might be literally accurate rather than purely symbolic. The visitor's precise navigation toward Mars, its apparent artificial characteristics, and its timing during a period of rapid human technological development all match patterns described in prophetic traditions spanning cultures and centuries. The Sanskrit concept of cyclical time, in which advanced civilizations rise and fall in cosmic cycles lasting millions of years, may preserve accurate information about galactic-scale processes that govern the development of technological species. If such cycles exist, humanity may be approaching one of the critical transition points where contact with superior intelligences determines whether emerging civilizations advance to cosmic citizenship or face extinction. Dr. Jacques Vallée, a computer scientist and astronomer who has studied the intersection, between scientific observation and mythological accounts of anomalous phenomena suggests that the apparent convergence of ancient mythology with modern astronomical observation might indicate that we re-witnessing events that operate on timescales far longer than human recorded history. What we call mythology might actually be history, Valley observes. Events so ancient and so extraordinary that they could only be preserved in symbolic form, transmitted through cultural memory until humanity developed the technical capabilities necessary to recognize their literal accuracy. The approach of 3I Atlas toward Mars could represent the return of forces that have been operating in our solar system for geological time periods, conducting interventions or observations that were witnessed by ancient humans and encoded in mythological accounts that we've dismissed as primitive fantasy. But the convergence of science and myth extends beyond simple validation of ancient accounts. It suggests that reality operates according to principles that transcend the narrow, materialistic framework that has dominated modern scientific thinking. If consciousness, intelligence, and technology can operate across interstellar distances and geological time periods, then our understanding of physics, biology, and cosmology may be fundamentally incomplete. The quantum mechanical discovery that observation affects reality at the subatomic level hints at possibilities that ancient philosophical traditions have long maintained. Consciousness may be a fundamental feature of the universe rather than an accidental byproduct of complex chemistry. If so, the intelligence behind 3I Atlas approach might represent forms of consciousness that operate according to principles we've barely begun to explore. Dr. Dean Radin, as research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, has documented measurable effects of human consciousness on physical systems, suggesting that the boundary between mind and matter is far more permeable than classical physics assumes. If consciousness can influence physical reality at the quantum level, sufficiently advanced consciousness might be capable of influencing matter and energy on planetary or even interstellar scales. The ancient concept of cosmic consciousness, universal intelligence that connects all conscious beings across space and time, may represent accurate description of actual cosmic phenomena rather than religious or philosophical speculation. The precision with which 3I Atlas navigates toward Mars might result from consciousness-based navigation systems that transcend the mechanical limitations of conventional technology. As the visitor approaches its destination, we re-witnessing what may be the first scientifically documented fulfillment of prophetic traditions that have shaped human culture for millennia. The arrival of celestial messengers, the return of cosmic forces that shaped previous world ages, the critical choice between technological transcendence and civilizational collapse, all themes that have been preserved in mythological accounts worldwide may be manifesting as literal observable events. The convergence of science and myth at this moment in human history suggests that we are approaching a phase transition in the development of consciousness and intelligence on Earth. Whether this transition represents evolution or extinction, contact or conquest, depends on whether we can integrate the wisdom preserved in our oldest stories with the precision of our newest instruments. Ancient mythology and modern astronomy may both be describing the same cosmic reality from different perspectives, separated by thousands of years of technological development. As these perspectives converge, we may discover that the universe is far stranger, far more conscious, and far more dangerous than either science or myth alone could reveal. The approach of 3I Atlas toward Mars marks the moment when humanity's oldest fears and highest hopes about our place in the cosmos begin to manifest as measurable reality. The marriage of science and myth may produce offspring that transform our understanding of intelligence, consciousness, and the cosmic forces that shape the destiny of worlds. The spacecraft drifts in silence. Beyond the red glow of Mars, the black canvas of space stretches endlessly, dotted with cold and ancient stars. Against this eternal stillness, the lens of humanity focuses, waiting, hoping for an answer. We watch as the signal streams back to Earth. Each packet of data carries with it the possibility of revelation. On our screens, pixels of light form an image. At first, nothing more than a speck, barely brighter than the background noise. But with every frame, the speck grows sharper. 31ATLAS, the traveler, the question mark in the sky, comes into view. What will it reveal? Is it a wandering shard of ice and stone, an interstellar orphan flung from some forgotten system? Or is it something else? Something that defies the silence of the void? Scientists hold their breath. The data arrives grainy, distorted by the distance, yet patterns begin to emerge. The object glimmers faintly, its surface reflecting not like rock, but with a strange, muted sheen. A geometry that seems almost deliberate, corners where nature prefers curves, shadows where randomness should reign. The spacecraft adjusts its instruments, zooming closer. Radiation scans detect faint anomalies, pulses too regular to be cosmic coincidence, too erratic to be dismissed as background noise. Are these natural emissions or the heartbeat of a machine? And then the transmission stutters. For a moment, silence. The kind of silence that chills more deeply than any storm. Engineers scramble, fearing a system failure. But the link restores just in time to send one final burst of data images, spectra, and a cryptic echo in the signal. The last frame is haunting. A TLS fills the lens. Its surface fractured, scarred, and ancient, yet oddly familiar. Patterns etched across its body resemble not random cracks, but inscriptions, as if written by a hand that understood both geometry and eternity. Some see simple coincidence, others whisper of design, and then the feed goes dark. The spacecraft's instruments fall silent, swallowed by static. No more images, no more data. Only the lingering ghost of that last enigmatic transmission. Back on Earth, the world debates endlessly. Analysts argue over the spectral lines, claiming faint signatures of metals rare in nature. Others dismiss it as noise. Conspiracy grows in the shadows. Was the signal cut deliberately? Was the truth too dangerous to share? We are left with questions. Did we witness a fragment of an alien civilization? Or did we simply stare too long at a shadow, seeing patterns where none exist? The last transmission is not only data, it is a mirror, reflecting our hopes, our fears, and our relentless hunger to know what lies beyond the veil. And yet, as silence returns to the cosmos, one truth becomes clear. The mystery of 3I Atlas has only deepened. Transition. But even as the last signal fades into static, the red planet remains below, watching in silence. And it is there, in the dust of Mars, that we are left with our final reflection. Mars turns slowly beneath the stars. Its deserts stretch endlessly, painted in ochres and crimson, as if the planet itself remembers a time of fire and flood. And above, in its thin, quiet sky, the shadow of 3I Atlas passes, leaving more questions than answers. What does it mean to witness such a visitor? Is Atlas a weapon, a messenger, or nothing more than a silent wanderer caught in gravity's embrace? Perhaps in the end, the answer matters less than the mirror it holds up to us. For in Atlas, we glimpse our own longing, the need to seek, to explain, to imagine. Its silence forces us to confront the vastness we inhabit. And Mars, barren and scarred, becomes a stage upon which humanity projects its fears of extinction, its dreams of survival, and its myths of gods and cosmic wars. Consider this. Once, Mars was alive. Rivers carved valleys, oceans glistened under alien suns, and winds sculpted landscapes much like Earth's. Now it is silent, a graveyard of possibility. Some believe it is a warning that civilizations, even planets, are not immune to time's erasure. Others believe it is an invitation, a place to begin again, to plant seeds of life where silence now reigns. And so, Atlas drifts near Mars, not as an answer, but as a question. Are we alone in the universe, or surrounded by echoes too vast for us to hear? Are we the architects of our own survival, or pawns in a cosmic drama written long before Earth cooled into being? In the red dust of Mars, reflection takes shape. Philosophers see it as a parable, the fall of one world echoing in the rise of another. Scientists see it as a puzzle, data to be measured, compared, explained. Mystics see it as a sign, a reminder that humanity has always lived under the gaze of the heavens, guided by omens both real and imagined. But perhaps the truth is simpler. Perhaps 3i Atlaeus wants nothing. Perhaps Mars waits for no one. Perhaps the silence is not mystery, but reality. And yet, do we not live for mystery? For the possibility that tomorrow holds more than today? The reflection lingers like a dream. Mars whispers of our fragility, Atlas of our curiosity. Together they remind us that knowledge is never final, that certainty is an illusion, and that the universe will always remain larger than our imagination. And so, the documentary closes not with an answer, but with a question. What does 3i Atlas want with Mars? The truth may be beyond us, hidden in static and dust. Or perhaps the question was never about Atlas at all, but about us, about who we are and who we might become when faced with the unknown. As the red dust settles and the last stars fade into morning light, the cosmos continues its eternal dance, silent, patient, waiting. And we, tiny voyagers on a fragile world, can only wonder and dream. And with calm cinematic fade, the universe keeps its secrets, and perhaps that is its greatest gift.